The patriarch of the Gus clan, Gu Yuan, cursed inside when he heard this voice. He felt his head begin to ache. Although he had no idea who the woman was, he understood his son's behavior. Even without thinking, he knew that the woman would be related to his son. If it were some other time, he would not be bothered to care about a trivial matter like this, but at a time like this, it would definitely give young Master Chang Yang a bad impression. Naturally, Gu Yuan did not want to see this happen. After all, he wanted to use this opportunity to befriend this young Master Chang Yang. Young master, it's probably some argument due to some conflict between servants. With your esteemed status, the place where servants reside do not suit you. Let's go elsewhere and have a look, Gu Yuan said from the side. However, just when Gu Yuan finished talking, a lecherous voice rang out. Ha ha ha. Self-destruct? With your mere cultivation at returnance, you want to self-destruct before me? Aren't you underestimating me a little too much? TSK, this woman really is impressive. Not only does she possess otherworldly beauty, but more importantly, she possesses a bearing that only experts have. I heard you came up from a lower world, so that means you were once the sovereign of the lower world, an existence that controlled the fate of countless people. He, I love women like this the most. Dominating these past sovereigns of lower worlds must lead to great pleasure. Gu Yuan's face became ugly when he heard this voice. Jian Chen closed the fan in his hand with a clap and made his way towards the hall, moving towards the direction of the voice. When he approached the door, He rushed to the door and opened it directly. Jian Chen strode in. As soon as he entered the building, he saw a woman of otherworldly beauty standing there pale with anger as she glared ahead. There was no fear on her face at all. Only bone-deep hatred and intense killing intent existed. Jian Chen's gaze locked onto the woman. She wore the same, azure clothes and had the same familiar face. She was the Qing Yishuan that he had met in the Sea Realm. Seeing how Qing Yishuan was still unharmed, Jian Chen finally became relieved. "Who are you? Who let you in?" At this moment, a man's shout rang out. A rather handsome young man stood near Qing Yishuan. His nefarious smile vanished as Jian Chen suddenly barged him. His face sank as he glared at Jian Chen. "Do not be rude." Gu Yuan walked in with an ugly expression as he glared at the young man. "Father, why have you come?" The young man immediately became surprised by Gu Yuan's arrival. He knew that his father never came to this place. "This is young Master Chang Yang. Why don't you greet him?" Gu Yuan growled at the young man before telling Jian Chen politely, "Young Master Chang Yang, this is my embarrassment of a son, Gu Feng." Gu Feng was not dim. He could tell from how his father behaved that this young Master Chang Yang probably had great origins. Immediately, he suppressed his unhappiness and glanced at Jian Chen in surprise and doubt as he immediately clasped his hands in greeting. "Strange. Where I stay is a rather remote part of the clan. Why has this young Master Chang Yang that even father treats so politely come to a place like this?" Gu Feng felt very confused. What a special woman." Jian Chen ignored Gu Feng. He looked at Qing Yishuan, and his eyes immediately lit up. He waved his fan as he walked around Qing Yishuan, studying her with great interest. He praised, a stubborn personality where she'd rather die than to give in. Most importantly, I can actually see a unique bearing from her that only peak experts possess. Yep, this woman has the right to become my personal servant and serve me. Gu Feng's face immediately changed. Just when he was about to say something, Gu Yuan's chuckle rang out. "It's her blessing to be able to catch young Master Chang Yang's eye. Since young Master Chang Yang has taken a liking to her, I'll make the decision to gift this beautiful woman to the young master." "Father," Gu Feng began to talk. His face was ugly and filled with reluctance. However, after Gu Yuan glared at him, he forced his mouth shut. At this moment, Qing Yishuan suddenly looked at Jian Chen. She said coldly, "I can follow you if you only want me as your servant. However, you need to guarantee that you will not defile me in any way." Due to Jian Chen's disguise and concealed presence, Qing Yishuan failed to recognize him. Jian Chen smiled impudently as he used his fan to prop up Qing Yishuan's chin slightly. He smiled gently. This is the saint's world, not the lower world where you once reigned supreme. You're a puny origin realm cultivator, so what right do you have to discuss conditions with me? Qing Yishuan's face darkened when she heard that, but she still said stubbornly, if you don't agree, I'd rather die than follow you. You'd rather die? As if Jian Chen had heard the funniest joke in the world, he chuckled, before me, even dying is difficult for a puny origin realm cultivator like you. You have no choice at all. At this moment, He took a step over and directly extended a finger towards Qing Yishuan's back, controlling her easily. Afterwards, he returned behind Jian Chen with Qing Yishuan and strode out. The patriarch of the Gus clan dared not object. Instead, he stood to one side with his head down smiling. He was afraid of showing signs of coldness. Now that the goal of the trip was fulfilled, Jian Chen was unwilling to remain for much longer. Before long, he bid farewell to Gu Yuan and left the Gus clan with Qing Yishuan. Father, don't you think this young master Chang Yang seems rather strange? From what you said, I feel like this young master Chang Yang came especially for that woman, the young master of the Gus clan, Gu Feng, said in doubt after Jian Chen departed. That's right. Patriarch, I also feel the same, a god king of the Gus clan added. The patriarch looked in the direction where Jian Chen had traveled off to. After a moment of thought, he said, it is a little strange, but there are two things we can be certain about at the very least. First, this young master Chang Yang is not simple. I secretly used a secret technique, but I was unable to see his exact strength. Just that means he's no ordinary person. Secondly, the bodyguard with him is truly a peak god king. His cultivation is even slightly greater than mine and the Grand Elders. Yet an expert like that still had to show respect towards the young master, and this respect came from the bottom of his heart. He truly treated himself as a subordinate. He wasn't faking it at all. What does that mean? Perhaps the young master became rather eager to enjoy himself after seeing the woman with the extraordinary bearing, which was why he left in a hurry, an early god king sniggered. At the same time, a deep voice rang out underground outside a formation-clad secret room within the Blood Battle clan. This was a clan that stood equal to the Gus clan as one of the three great organizations of the Thousand Leaf Empire. Ancestor, I've just received news that a potential young master of a peak clan has suddenly appeared in the imperial capital, and he paid a visit to the Gus clan. What's this got to do with our Blood Battle clan? The ancestor's cold voice rang out from the secret room. Ancestor, our Blood Battle clan matches the Gus clan in strength. It's basically impossible for us to destroy the Gus clan alone. However, I think an opportunity has presented itself now. You're saying to rope in that young master with a tremendous background? The ancestor said. Roping him in might not be effective. There's a more direct method right now, which is to kill the young master and then blame the Gus clan. However, there's a peak god king beside the young master, so for the sake of safety, the ancestor has to take action personally. Chapter 2194, The Blood Battle Clan. Shifting the blame onto the Gus clan won't be easy. How confident are you in succeeding? The ancestor of the Blood Battle clan asked from the secret room. Although their Blood Battle clan was the same as the Gus clan, one of the three great organizations of the Thousand Leaf Empire, the three organizations did not get along well. They fought constantly. In particular, the Blood Battle clan and Gus clan had developed irreconcilable grievances many years ago. However, the two clans were equal in strength, so they were unable to destroy the other. As a result, neither the Blood Battle clan or the Gus clan dared to wage a full-blown war, as they were afraid that they would be taken advantage of once they suffered losses. However, once they found a chance to destroy the other side, they would never just let it slip. That young master has already left the Gus clan. It's a very good opportunity. Our Blood Battle clan has been setting up secret arrangements for many years now. As long as we use them well, I have over 90% confidence that the Gus clan will bear the blame, said the person outside the secret room. He was filled with confidence as if victory was already in his grasp. Rumble. With a heavy sound, the door to the secret room slowly opened. A chilling killing intent radiated out from the room in an overwhelming manner, causing the temperature in the surroundings to plummet. A determined, middle-aged man walked out slowly with hair that reached his waist. He wore a set of red robes, which seemed like they had been dyed with blood. He gave off a bloody smell. The heavy presence from him had completely exceeded the level of God Kings, having reached a higher level, the primordial realm. I left everything important in the clan up to you, and you really haven't disappointed me. Go complete the arrangements. Remember, you can't let any trace of this slip out. You need to ensure that no accidents will happen. We can't doom the clan. I'll personally deal with the young master, the ancestor said sternly. Yes, ancestor. I'll go organize everything right now. The person left. The ancestor of the Blood Battle clan stood outside the entrance of the secret room. His gaze was piercing as he murmured, "There's a very large risk to this, but for the sake of the Gus clan's destruction, we need to risk it." Jian Shen waved his fan as he strolled through the imperial capital of the Thousand Leaf Empire leisurely. Qin Yishuan and Heya followed him closely. Heya followed Jian Shen naturally, truly treating himself as a bodyguard, a servant. After all, he had already submitted himself to Jian Shen back in the Neptunian Divine Palace. As for Qin Yishuan, she followed behind Jian Shen reluctantly. She felt humiliated and was gritting teeth. She gradually felt despair. Although she had left the Gus clan and escaped from the first young master, ending up with this young master Chang Yang seemed no different to ending up with the first young master of the Gus clan. This young master that even the Gus clan feared also eyed her beauty. He was no different to the first young master of the Gus clan. At this moment, Jian Shen suddenly looked back at Qin Yishuan. He said, "You were captured by the people of the Gus clan. If it were not for my arrival in time, you probably would have been defiled by Gu Feng. Do you want revenge? Do you want to kill Gu Feng personally as well as the guards who took you away?" Qin Yishuan stared at Jian Shen coldly when she heard that. She said frigidly, "If my body is what you want for that, I don't need your assistance." "Hee, you're quite stubborn." Jian Shen smiled indifferently, "This is the saint's world. It's no longer the low-level world you came from. Here, you need to adapt to the laws of survival and reevaluate your identity, or you'll struggle to survive." Qin Yishuan listened silently from behind. She gritted her teeth and said nothing. Suddenly, Qin Yishuan's body froze up. She came to a halt and remained where she was, staring ahead with a fixed gaze. A wanted poster for Jian Shen was stuck there in an eye-catching manner. Many people stopped around the poster as they discussed while pointing at Jian Shen's image. "It's actually Jian Shen." Qin Yishuan's heart was in turmoil when she saw the familiar face and name. The saint's world was so vast, so she had never thought she would hear about Jian Shen so soon. Even though it was a wanted poster, it allowed Qin Yishuan to know that Jian Shen was still alive at the very least. Not only was he alive, but he had even created so much trouble as well. "I never thought he would have already become a God King, and even Supreme God Kings have died to his hands." Qin Yishuan's feelings became extremely mixed when she saw Jian Shen's accomplishments that were enough to make her envy. She seemed to see the kid who could crumble from a single attack from her steal the Octaterra map fragment again. Back then, Jian Shen's strength did not catch her attention at all. He was extremely puny. Yet now, he had become a mighty God King in her eyes, while she was only at the origin realm. Qin Yishuan looked at Jian Shen's wanted poster silently before sighing secretly. She began to walk away gloomily. "Jian Shen, I want to help you, but I can't even protect myself right now, so I can only wish you the best. I hope you survive," Qin Yishuan thought. "We won't be staying on planet Tianming for long. Is there any unsettled business you have here?" At this moment, Jian Shen's voice rang out. Qin Yishuan hesitated after hearing that. She bit her lip gently and said seriously, "I still have a sister that I met here recently. I want to bid farewell to her." Then go. Heya, go with her. Make sure she's safe. At the same time, give some of your divine crystals to her sister, Jian Chen said to Heya. Naturally, he knew who Qi Nishuan was talking about. It was the scarred woman. Yes, young master, Heya replied, before leaving with Qi Nishuan. With their departure, Jian Chen immediately stopped behaving impudently. He gradually became stern. He glanced at the sky, and a cold light flickered through his eyes. Immediately, he flew out of the city. He had already sensed long ago that not only was he being followed, but there also seemed to be a pair of invisible eyes that would lock onto him from time to time. Whenever the eyes stared at him, Jian Chen would feel threatened. However, basically no god kings possessed the power to threaten him any longer. Only primordial realm experts who had surpassed God King could do so now. Chapter 2195, Fighting the Primordial Realm. Although I don't know who's following me secretly, but since I can sense them, it means that the primordial realm expert isn't particularly powerful. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to sense them, thought Jian Chen. After reaching the 13th layer, his strength was not the only thing that had increased. His abilities in various aspects had increased by quite a lot as well. Otherwise, he never would have been able to sense a primordial realm expert observing him secretly. The 12th layer of the chaotic body gave me battle prowess greater than most supreme god kings on the god king's throne. Now that my chaotic body has broken through again, I wonder what level my battle prowess has reached now. Will I be able to stand firmly as the first place on the god king's throne? It's said that the top 10 experts of the God King's throne can hold their ground against primordial realm experts or even kill them. I wonder if I can kill primordial realm experts now. I need a primordial realm expert urgently to try it out and test my current strength. Let's use the primordial realm expert spying on me then. Although there's a risk of exposure by doing this, I don't plan on staying on planet Tianming for much longer. Jian Chen left the imperial capital of the Thousand Leaf Empire. He maintained a facade as he flew off into the distance at a steady speed. However, his speed was still extremely shocking. Before long, he had traveled 1,000,000 kilometers from the imperial capital. However, the primordial realm expert tailing him still did not show himself. However, Jian Chen could clearly sense that the primordial realm expert had always been following him. It was just that he hid himself very well. As such, given Jian Chen's current strength, he was unable to find him. To avoid alarming the person, Jian Chen did not show any irregular behavior along the way. He even dared not use the senses of his soul. Has the person stalking me realized who I am, or is it because of some other reason? Questions weighed on Jian Chen's mind. This was extremely important, as it had a direct correlation to his safety and future. He needed to understand the reason. When Jian Chen traveled 2,000,000 kilometers away from the imperial capital, the space where he stood suddenly distorted violently. The landscape around him vanished, and it was replaced by a barren world. Jian Chen came to a halt. He studied the barren world and became stern. He could tell with a single glance that this was a miniature world independent from the saint's world. He had been sucked into this world unknowingly. He was not unfamiliar with miniature worlds, as there were many on the Tianyuan continent. The 10 protector clans all resided in miniature worlds opened up by saint emperors. However, miniature worlds also varied in strength. In weaker worlds, the battles between sainthood experts would be enough to cause its collapse. Clearly, the miniature world he had entered now was not low in strength. The space was extremely sturdy, enough to endure the battle shockwaves of infinite primes. At this moment, a powerful pulse of energy appeared, causing the space in the miniature world to ripple like water. Ocean-like energy surged high up in the air and instantly condensed into a huge, thick finger. With the power of slaughter, it suddenly fell towards Jian Chen. The finger was extremely powerful. It was truly devastating. As the finger fell, all the space in the miniature world warped and became blurry. Jian Chen's heart sank. The infinite prime he encountered this time was not a regular primordial realm expert. Instead, he comprehended one of the most offensive laws, the laws of slaughter. He would be a far more difficult opponent compared to most other experts at the same cultivation level. Moreover, his opponent struck out extremely decisively. He said nothing and unleashed his full strength right from the start with heavy killing intent. Clearly, he wanted to kill Jian Chen cleanly. Jian Chen bellowed out at the sky, and he immediately fought back. His presence rapidly skyrocketed as the power of the laws of the sword condensed around him, turning into a huge strand of sword chi that collided with the finger loudly. Jian Chen did not use his full strength in the attack. In reality, he did not even use half of his strength. He only unleashed the might of a God King who ranked within the top 100 of the God King's throne. Boom! With a heavy rumble, Jian Chen was blown out of the sky like a broken kite. He struck the ground heavily. His face paled as blood oozed from his lips. He seemed like he was heavily injured, lying on the ground and struggling to climb to his feet. Who are you? Why have you suddenly attacked me? Jian Chen bellowed out furiously as he stared at the sky. Who I am is not important. What is important is that you won't be leaving here alive today, young Master Chang Yang, a cold voice rang out from the sky. A gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. The way this person had referred to him allowed Jian Chen to understand that his identity has not been exposed, which was relieving. However, his expression did not change at all. He called out, "Since you know my name, you must know my background as well. Are you really that confident in killing me? But what confuses me is that I have no enemies on planet Tianming, so why are you trying to kill me? Since you want to know, I'll let you die knowing. My miniature world is no regular miniature world. No matter how many secret techniques for escape you have, they'll be useless here. Even if you have outstanding treasures for escape, you won't have the opportunity to use them before me. As a result, you're done for today. The reason why I want to kill you is to shift the blame to the Gus clan. As long as you die, we can shift the blame almost flawlessly with our secret arrangement, so the Gus clan will be destroyed. I know your background is impressive and that you have even more powerful peak experts behind you. These peak experts are able to peer into the heavenly secrets. However, you better give up on that thought. Since I'm bold enough to move against you, I have complete confidence in removing all traces, where even the peak experts won't be able to find anything. You know everything you should know now. Young Master Chang Yang, it's time to send you off." With that, the overwhelming energy gathered once again. Strands of power of slaughter filled the surroundings, forming a huge blade completely condensed out of origin energy and the power of laws. It whistled towards Jian Chen's head. The person clearly did not want to waste any more time. He was afraid that accidents would happen if he did. Jian Chen's fake panic vanished as he watched the blade approach him rapidly with the might of the primordial realm. He became calm and composed while his eyes were icy. His piercing gaze was like a sword. In the next moment, a sharp and powerful sword chi radiated from Jian Chen. It shone brightly and was as dazzling as the sun. At that moment, he seemed to have become a completely different person. His presence surged towards the clouds as his battle intent was shocking. Jian Chen hurled a fist at the sky. Chaotic force condensed in his hand and collided against the blade along with the power of the laws of the sword. With a rumble, the miniature world shook gently. The blade shattered from Jian Chen's punch, reduced to a storm of energy that wreaked havoc in the surroundings. Jian Chen, on the other hand, seemed like an undefeatable god of war, bearing no resemblance to his previous injured state. His presence surged as he endured the storm of energy. Immediately, he charged into the sky and glanced towards a certain place. His pupils were astonishing as if light surged within them. "Why you?" The sudden change in the situation stunned the hidden primordial realm expert. The young Master Chang Yang, who was supposed to be at death's door, had suddenly become all energetic and displayed incredible battle prowess, which filled him with disbelief. Ignoring the shock of the hidden expert, Jian Chen hovered in the air as the power of the laws of the sword gathered, and chaotic force surged within him. A huge strand of gray sword chi immediately condensed in his hand. Suddenly, he swung it at the space before him. Jian Shen did not hold back at all this time. He completely unleashed the power of the 13th layer such that his strike truly seemed like it could split the world and make it pale in fright. It completely exceeded the level of God Kings, reaching the primordial realm. With a deafening rumble, the miniature world shook even more violently. The hidden primordial realm expert had been forced out from space by Jian Chen's strike, making him appear. He was a steadfast, middle-aged man in red robes with hair that reached his waist. Currently, he stared at the awe-inspiring young Master Chang Yang, who radiated with battle intent. He was completely shocked and at a loss. The middle-aged man was the ancestor of the Blood Battle clan. Why, you're at the primordial realm? The ancestor stared at Jian Chen as his face changed rapidly. He was uneasy. My cultivation level is not important. What is important is that you probably don't have the ability to kill me, Jian Chen said coldly. He hovered in the sky as sword chi surrounded him in the form of a silver-white light. He illuminated the surroundings, making him seem like a god descending from heaven. He extended a finger gently. When the powerful sword intent that belonged to the great perfection of sword spirit appeared, a golden strand of sword chi immediately condensed up ahead. It shot through the air as a golden streak of light towards the ancestor of the Blood Battle clan. The golden sword chi seemed to possess some black as well. It was chaotic force. The ancestor's face became extremely ugly. He also extended a finger, and strands of power of slaughter gathered around him. They formed a long beam of laws, colliding with the incoming sword chi loudly. With a deafening boom, the golden sword chi directly dispersed from the collision, reduced to countless tiny strands that scattered in the surroundings. The beam woven from laws rapidly darkened as well, but it did not disperse in the end. It shot towards Jian Chen with its remaining power. The Daluo sword is no longer enough. Jian Chen frowned slightly at this outcome. After reaching the 13th layer with the chaotic body and the great perfection of sword spirit with the way of the sword, he realized that the various sword techniques he grasped before have basically become useless due to their grade. This was because with his current strength, even just a casual strike would be far more powerful than the limits of the Daluo sword. The end result was that his Daluo sword would only possess the shape of the technique and not the essence. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed, and he gave up on using the sword techniques that he knew. With a wave of his sleeve, he sent out a streak of light that dispersed the remaining power of slaughter. Afterwards, he extended a finger on his right hand to condense a strand of sword chi into a sword-like shape, charging towards the ancestor in a threatening manner. The ancestor's face sank. He blocked Jian Chen's incoming attack and growled, "Young Master Chang Yang, it's my fault this time, but fortunately, it hasn't resulted in a great mistake yet. I hope the young master can forgive me, and I will leave right away. If it were not for the fact that I had strength to spare, I would be a corpse already. Since you want to kill me, I can't let you go. Only one of us will be leaving here alive today," Jian Chen said coldly. He stopped using all his sword techniques and fought in the most basic way. He wielded the sword chi on his finger in an airtight manner, stabbing out time and time again. He was faster than lightning, only leaving afterimages behind. The afterimages stacked upon one another and became as densely packed as rain. At that moment, his attack could be described as a storm-like barrage. "Young Master Chang Yang, are we really unable to let today's matter be?" The ancestor asked sternly. Although the strength of the young master had completely surprised him, he could tell that the young master was still slightly weaker than himself. If he used his full strength and paid a certain price, it was not impossible for him to kill the young master here. Moreover, this place was his miniature world. As long as the miniature world remained, he did not have to worry about the young master fleeing at all. This was because his miniature world was rather special. Many methods of escape would be useless here. If I were really just a god king, would you let me live? It's impossible for me to just forgive and forget, Jian Chen said coldly. Killing intent radiated from him as his presence surged. He struck out with his full strength, without holding back at all. Jian Chen had gained a rough understanding of his strength now. The 13th layer of the chaotic body indeed gave him the right to challenge primordial realm experts. The only lacking aspect was his comprehension of laws. Of the laws he had comprehended, the laws of destruction still remained at late over God, while the laws of the sword were equivalent to peak God King. In a clash of laws, he was not the opponent of the ancestors' laws of slaughter. He completely relied on the battle prowess that the chaotic force bestowed upon him to close the gap between him and primordial realm experts. Since that's the case, don't blame me. A vicious light flashed through the ancestor's eyes. Terrifying energy erupted from him like tidal waves as the primordial realm laws rapidly descended from space. He formed seals with his hands. Every gesture and transformation seemed to abide by the truths of the world and contain the mysteries of laws as if it could make the world move. Apocalyptic palm. Suddenly, the ancestor called out loudly, and he directly attacked Jian Chen with a palm strike that abided with countless truths. Immediately, the terrifying energy and power of laws around the ancestor rapidly condensed into a huge hand that struck towards Jian Chen with a tremendous pressure that originated from the world. The miniature world shook violently. Space distorted, making vision blurry. The entire space was like water, where it was covered with ripples. The palm strike was just too powerful. It seemed to have reached the limits of the miniature world. God-tier battle skill. Jian Chen's face changed, and he became extremely stern. This was a god-tier battle skill a primordial realm expert cast, so all of its power was unleashed. It was unlike the attacks of the supreme god kings in the Neptunian divine palace, where both god artifacts and god-tier battle skills were weakened significantly in their hands. Even though Jian Chen had reached the 13th layer, he dared not face the ancestor's god-tier battle skill carelessly. He felt a huge pressure from the god-tier battle skill that was brimming with power. With a flip of his hand, the 9-star sword of heavenly ways appeared in Jian Chen's hand. Chaotic force rampaged within him, and all of it poured into the sword, causing the weapon to explode with dazzling light. It was like countless stars had gathered together. Huge stars were conjured from the 9-star sword of heavenly ways one after another. 1, 2, 6. With every star, the pressure that the sword gave off became stronger. It only stopped when 6 stars were conjured. At that moment, the pressure from the sword was extremely terrifying, no weaker than the ancestor's god-tier battle skill. God artifact. Sensing the astonishing pressure from the sword, the ancestor's face changed slightly as he felt envy from the bottom of his heart. God artifacts were so precious in the saints' world that even many primordial realm experts did not possess a single one. Although the ancestor of the Blood Battle clan had reached the primordial realm and was one of the supreme figures of the Thousand Leaf Empire, he did not possess a god artifact. Jian Chen swung the sword in his hand, and terrifying energy erupted out like a tsunami. Under the radiance of countless stars, it collided with the ancestor's apocalyptic palm. Chapter 2197, Death of the Primordial Realm, 1, Boom. With that great rumble, the 9-star sword of heavenly ways clashed with the apocalyptic palm in the most intense fashion. An extremely sharp sword chi and dazzling starlight accompanied it. This was basically a clash of the primordial realm. The extremely powerful chaotic force collided with the god-tier battle skill forcefully, producing an extremely great explosion. The laws of the sword and the laws of slaughter intermingled as chaotic force, and origin energy rampaged. It was like resplendent fireworks, surging out magnificently. The violent energy shockwaves made even space ripple. With a destructive power, it suppressed the space of the miniature world, splaying out in all direction violently. The ripples of energy constantly forced Jian Chen back. He protected himself with light from the laws of the sword, shining brightly as he pushed the defense of his chaotic body to the limit. He constantly slashed out with his sword to cut the incoming energy to pieces. Every attack possessed resplendent starlight. On the other side, the ancestor of the Blood Battle clan was sunken. His body was unable to endure the violent energy storm, so he was forced back against his will. They had unleashed their full strength in this clash, without holding anything back. As a result, even the two of them struggled to stabilize themselves under the storm of energy created. I never thought that this young Master Chang Yang would actually be so troublesome. The power he uses is so strange that I've never seen or heard of it before. Coupled with his god artifact, it's basically impossible for me to kill him. At most, it'll end up with heavy losses on both sides, thought the ancestor of the Blood Battle clan. At this moment, he felt regret. He cursed his own carelessness, taking action rashly without properly gauging his opponent's strength first. When he thought up to there, the ancestor's heart suddenly shivered. His eyes also narrowed as he stared ahead sternly. The violent storm of energy still had not dispersed. It caused space to tremble constantly, reducing the landscape before him to a blur. Even with the ancestor's eyes, he was unable to see through it. The senses of his soul was affected as well. At this moment, soaring sword chi suddenly appeared. Abruptly, a dazzling streak of light shot out from the storm of energy. The 9-star sword of heavenly ways had torn through the storm with powerful sword chi while glowing brightly, turning into a white streak of light as it stabbed towards the ancestor at a speed beyond lightning. The ancestor's eyes were frigid. His face was cold as a blood-red set of armor appeared, enveloping him completely. A sword had also appeared in his hand, shining coldly. The laws of slaughter gathered as he slashed it towards Jian Chen with terrifying force. Spurt. Jian Chen's 9-star sword of heavenly ways pierced through the ancestor's armor in a single stroke as it shone with dense starlight. It stabbed into the ancestor's chest with sharp sword chi and chaotic force and constantly penetrated deeper. The tip emerged from the ancestor's back as the blood of a primordial realm expert dripped from the tip. At almost the same time, the ancestor's sword stabbed into Jian Chen's body. Jian Chen was emotionless, and his eyes were cold. Chaotic force circulated within him wildly as strands of it surged out from his chaotic Niden. Like wild horses, it rampaged within him rapidly. Most of it gathered towards the location of the wound, fusing with the blood, flesh, and bone there. He had already pushed the defense of his 13th layer chaotic body to the limit, allowing his body to reach its toughest state. He did not fear any attacks. Coupled with the channeling of tremendous amounts of chaotic force, the location of his injury, whether it was the flesh, blood, tendon or bone, had all become extremely tough. As soon as the ancestor's sword stabbed into Jian Chen's chest, he encountered a great resistance such that it became harder and harder to push his sword into Jian Chen's body. In the end, the weapon became wedged between two ribs and could no longer advance any further. The ancestor of the Blood Battle clan could not help but gasp. His eyes widened as he stared at Jian Chen's chest in disbelief. He was shocked. Naturally, he could tell that Jian Chen did not have any protective treasure with his insight. His sword could not stab any deeper and pierce Jian Chen completely because Jian Chen's body was just too tough, so tough that it was shocking. Just the toughness of his body alone was enough to block powerful attacks from primordial realm experts. Unless I wield a god artifact or use a god-tier battle skill, it's very difficult for me to threaten young Master Chang Yang. The ancestor became pessimistic. Jian Chen's body was so tough that it was impossible for him to kill Jian Chen with just a supreme quality saint artifact. If he could not kill his opponent, only the destruction of his Blood Battle clan awaited him. Suddenly, the ancestor's face froze up. He stared right at Jian Chen as he could not help but become excited. He called out, "I know. You're not young Master Chang Yang. Your name is fake, your identity is fake, and even your appearance is fake. You're that Jian Chen wanted by the solitary sword ancestor and the Azure Pen King. It can't be wrong. It can't be wrong. You're Jian Chen. You have a tough body and strange but violent energy. You comprehend the laws of the sword, and you wield a god artifact that shines with starlight. All of these characteristics match the description on the wanted poster." After guessing Jian Chen's identity, the ancestor's gloom completely vanished. He could not help but laugh aloud, "Ha ha 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 ha. Jian Chen, who knows how many people are searching for you in the entire Saints world, but it was me who actually encountered you here. This is a blessing from the heavens." The ancestor of the Blood Battle clan was overjoyed. Young Master Chang Yang was actually Jian Chen. Not only was there no need to worry about revenge from the people behind young Master Chang Yang, but he could even report Jian Chen's traces to the solitary sword ancestor and Azure Peking, making the two of them owe him a favor. With the favors of the two peak experts, no one would be bold enough to provoke their Blood Battle clan anymore on the entire planet. By then, even the Lord of Planet Tianming would have to treat their clan politely and courteously. This was because both the solitary sword ancestor and the Azure Peking were terrifying figures who could claim to be invincible on planet Tianming. Chapter 2198, Death of the Primordial Realm. 2. The ancestor of the Blood Battle clan was overjoyed. He believed that he was the first one to find Jian Chen. As long as he conveyed the news about Jian Chen to the solitary sword ancestor and the Azure Peking first, destroying the Gus clan would become a piece of cake. When Jian Chen saw how excited the ancestor had become, his killing intent rose. With an icy gaze, he said coldly, "Since I'm bold enough to fight you, that means I'm not afraid of revealing my identity, as I won't let you leave here alive." Ha 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 ha. Jian Chen, you really are arrogant to look down on a primordial realm expert. I'd like to see how you make me stay today. The ancestor laughed aloud. After learning Jian Chen's identity, he no longer tried to fight anymore. He immediately retreated hastily in an attempt to leave here and convey the news to the solitary sword ancestor and the Azure Peking as quickly as possible. The solitary sword ancestor and the Azure Peking were peak experts who were renowned throughout the Saints' world. Their abilities were exceptional. Every single wanted poster they had sent out detailed a simple set of hand seals to call them. As long as someone used the hand seals, they would be able to instantly alert the solitary sword ancestor and the Azure Peking no matter how far away they were. Even though there were countless people who knew the hand seals across the Saints' world, no one dared to contact the solitary sword ancestor and the Azure Peking casually because both of them could easily find the person who used the seals. Once they discovered someone was toying with them, the consequences would be so severe that probably no one could endure it. Clearly, the ancestor of the Blood Battle clan knew these hand seals because they were just too simple. He basically memorized them with a glance. However, the miniature world he had cast down was indeed like what he had said, rather special. Inside, not only were all the secret techniques for escape rendered useless, but even methods of communication were rendered useless. As a result, he needed to leave this miniature world to use the hand seals to alert the two experts. You've trapped me in this miniature world, but it also restrains you. Coupled with how you're injured and how my energy is within you, your wounds will become worse and worse as time goes on. I'd like to see how you escape from my hands, Jian Chen sneered. He poured chaotic force into the 9-star sword of heavenly ways, causing it to shine with the light of countless stars. It was an enchanting sight. The 6 huge stars were conjured once again. After bellowing out, he stabbed out with his full strength. This was a terrifying strike equivalent to a primordial realm expert using a god-tier battle skill. As he stabbed out, the sky roared furiously as the ground trembled. The entire space pulsed violently as sword chi radiated out, forming a tremendous pressure that fell on the ancestor's body. The expression of the ancestor of the Blood Battle sect changed suddenly. His eyes narrowed drastically. He could feel an intense threat from the attack. It was so great that it even surpassed his arch-nemesis, the ancestor of the Gus clan. Moreover, his presence had been locked onto. Sword intent sealed up the space around him, making it impossible for him to dodge or flee. At this moment, it was already too late for him to use his god-tier battle skill a second time. Origin energy erupted vigorously as primordial realm laws gathered on his saint artifact. He slashed out with surging energy. Crack! With an ear-splitting sound, the ancestor's supreme quality saint artifact shattered to pieces, while the 9-star sword of heavenly ways continued to shine brightly. It continued without slowing down at all, cutting off the ancestor's entire right arm. The ancestor's face twisted by an undetectable amount from the pain of losing an arm. Blood spurted out from his shoulder wildly, spraying into the sky like rain. If it were not for you god artifact, you would have never been my opponent, the ancestor called out viciously. He did not possess the support of a tough body like Jian Chen. After being injured twice, his battle prowess had plummeted. Not to mention that he had lost his crucial right arm, so his ability to counterattack became weaker and weaker. Moreover, Jian Chen had deposited a strand of pure power of the laws of the sword and chaotic force when he stabbed him, which rampaged like a wild horse right now. The ancestor of the Bloodbath clan had used his full strength to receive Jian Chen's attacks, so he could spare no extra effort into suppressing the energy within him. As a result, he could only let them rampage, which worsened his wounds rapidly. The more time he wasted, the more disadvantageous it was to him. The ancestor of the Blood Battle clan glanced at Jian Chen viciously. Gritting his teeth, he retreated in a flash, traveling 100 kilometers away in an instant. Then he swung his left hand, and the space beside him immediately cracked open, creating a spatial gate that led to the outside world. Then he stepped through it without any hesitation. A woo! Just when the ancestor had made it partially out of the miniature world, a wolf's howl suddenly rang out. The terrifying sound waves formed visible ripples and emanated outwards with an ancient sense of desolation. It possessed a tremendous pressure that seemed to stand above all lives. The pressure seemed to come from the heavenly ways themselves. It was mighty and utterly shocking, enough to shake up the souls of people. At that critical moment, Jian Chen had used the power of the ancient Skywolf's bloodline, unleashing an astonishing howl. The power of the bloodline had been absorbing the energy of the essence blood constantly, allowing it to rapidly strengthen. Compared to the past, the power was on a completely different level. Just when the ancestor was about to make his way out of the miniature world, he suddenly froze up. His soul suffered from a violent impact, stunning him on the spot. His gaze became lost at that moment. However, he was a primordial realm expert after all. It only took him a split second to recover. However, in battles at the primordial realm, a split second was enough to determine victory. As soon as the ancestor returned to his senses, he saw dazzling sword chi. As the endless starlight poured over, he was swallowed up by it. Spurt. Before the ancestor could react, the 9-star sword of heavenly ways had plunged into his forehead and pierced his head completely, wiping out his soul. A primordial realm expert just died like this. Just when the ancestor of the Blood Battle clan died, the eyes of a ruddy, sage-like old man suddenly snapped open. He was in a hall fit for a king within the majestic imperial palace several million kilometers away. His deep eyes seemed to be able to pierce through the countless obstructions and see where Jian Chen and the ancestor fought. He was stern. What a terrifying wolf's howl, and there's residual power from a battle at the primordial realm. Has a primordial realm expert of the Wolf clan come here, close to the imperial capital? The old man was the reason why the Thousand-Leaf Empire could exist. He was the only primordial realm expert of the imperial family. It was exactly because of him that the Thousand-Leaf Empire could stand among the ranks of the many ancient empires of planet Tianming at the same time. He was the person who deterred the 3 great organizations in the empire from acting up. As he said that, the old man stood up and was about to leave immediately. A battle between primordial realm experts had happened outside the imperial city. This was an extremely significant matter to his Thousand-Leaf Empire, so he needed to investigate it completely. After all, the entire Thousand-Leaf Empire only had 4 primordial realm experts if he was included. Chapter 2199, Location exposed. However, just when the old man was about to leave his residence, a power that was terrifyingly shocking to him appeared. It directly seeped through the various formations outside the hall, forming a powerful barrier that encased the interior. Sensing the terrifying pulses of energy that the barrier gave off, the old man's face immediately changed drastically. He was unable to remain calm anymore. Fear filled his face. May I ask how our Thousand-Leaf Empire has offended Senior? I hope that Senior can spare us. The old man immediately clasped his hands politely as his heart was in turmoil. He thought that his empire had offended someone. What happened outside has nothing to do with you. Just stay here, an old voice boomed out of nowhere in the hall. Yes, senior. At the same time, the two other primordial realm experts from the three peak clans who never paid attention to the affairs around them roused due to the shockwaves outside the city. Just when they were about to leave where they cultivated, they were also locked in by a powerful barrier that prevented them from leaving. At the location where they fought, Jian Shen slowly drew his sword out from the ancestor's head. He wiped off the blood and stowed the sword away in his space ring. He looked behind him. A fist-sized silver-white orb hovered there quietly. It shone with a hazy light and was quite enchanting. Jian Shen knew that this white orb was what created the miniature world. Immediately, he made his way over and grabbed it. Afterwards, he turned back and carried the ancestor's corpse, planning to leave. This was because when he killed the ancestor, the gate to the miniature world had been opened. The shockwaves from their battle would naturally pour through the gateway and into the outside world. As a matter of fact, even his wolf's howl had spread outside clearly. People would come to investigate very soon, so he could not stay here. I never thought you actually have the ability to kill a primordial realm expert. But just when Jian Shen wanted to move, an old voice rang out behind him. Su Ran, who was dressed in simple clothes, had appeared behind him silently. She kept her presence concealed, so she was like a ghost. She moved around without creating any traces at all, so Jian Shen failed to discover when she had arrived. If it were not for her speaking out, Jian Shen would not have even known that she was standing behind him. Senior Su, when did you come? Jian Shen clasped his hands at Su Ran. Su Ran looked at Jian Shen deeply. You're someone who has shaken up the saints' world, but I just happen to owe you a huge favor. How can I not look out for you? I know everything you did in the Thousand Leaf Empire. Even though Su Ran's cultivation level had regressed, she was still far greater than people at the same level of cultivation. It was impossible to compare her to infinite primes with the many methods and techniques she could use. Jian Shen's expression became rather unnatural. Suddenly, he discovered that he actually struggled to keep secrets from Su Ran. She was actually able to spy on him silently without alerting him. Is this how terrifying chaotic primes are? Jian Shen became alarmed. Su Ran looked at the white orb in Jian Shen's hand. She said, the orb in your hand is refined from a soul orb found in the heads of old world beasts. Old world beasts are an extremely ancient and rare species in the saints' world. In the current age in particular, old world beasts are almost extinct. Every single old world beast will nurture a universe within themselves that will evolve into a real world. The soul orb in your hand is the greatest treasure in an old world beast. They're extremely valuable. That's because miniature worlds created from the soul orbs of old world beasts have some special aspects. You probably know some of them already. Jian Shen could not help but properly study the orb in his hand. He had never thought that the orb would have such origins. It's just a pity that the soul orb in your hand is of a limited quality, or it would be priceless, Su Ran sighed gently and said in some pity. Then she glanced at the Blood Battle Clan ancestor's body, and she could not help but become stern. She said, let's go. We can't stay on planet Tianming any longer. Jian Shen followed Su Ran's gaze to properly study the corpse he carried. With that, his face immediately became ugly, as the corpse's left hand formed a strange seal. Jian Shen was familiar with this seal. All the wanted posters depicted them. It was the hand seals to contact the solitary sword ancestor and the Azure Pen King. Clearly, the ancestor of the Blood Battle Clan had already used the seals when he opened a gate out of the miniature world before Jian Shen had managed to kill him. Although Jian Shen could tell with a single glance that the ancestor had failed to complete the entire set of hand seals, the solitary sword ancestor and the Azure Pen King were both exceptional peak experts. No one knew whether the incomplete set of seals would still be able to attract their attention. Let's go. Jian Shen called out and threw the ancestor's corpse into the Anata Tower. Immediately, he left with Su Ran as quickly as possible. The azure-clothed Qin Yishuan bid farewell to the scarred woman reluctantly in a rather run-down stone hut within a remote region of the imperial capital. Sister Zi Qincheng, you have to wait for me. Once I become powerful enough, I'll definitely come looking for you on planet Tianming. Qin Yishuan hugged the woman tightly as determination flooded her eyes. Sister, just go. Don't worry about me. You can't forget that I'm a god. Although I'm not necessarily particularly powerful, I have just enough power to protect myself, said Zi Qincheng. She was filled with bitterness. Naturally, she knew that Qin Yishuan would suffer a fate no different than ending up in the hands of the Gus clan if she followed that young master Chang Yang, but the young master was someone that even the Gus clan could not afford to offend. Qin Yishuan was powerless to escape from his hands. Enough. Master is already urging me to take you towards the teleportation formation. We need to go, at this moment, Heya said from one side. He took out some divine crystals from his space ring to give to Zi Qincheng before leaving with Qin Yishuan. The solitary sword ancestor sat on his meteor in a region of space extremely distant from planet Tianming. He did not move at all and was just like a statue. The Azure Peking stood with his eyes closed beyond the meteor. He coldly stared at the sky full of stars. My subordinates will be able to find out about Jian Chen's origins very soon. As long as I find out which organization he belongs to and use that organization as a threat, I refuse to believe he won't show himself. Even if he abandons the organizations behind him, I can still find him. All I need is a droplet of blood from a relative of his, and I'll be able to find where he's hiding, the Azure Peking said coldly. At this moment, the solitary sword ancestor suddenly opened his eyes. His old eyes shone brightly as he stared at the depths of space. He growled, someone has used the set of seals I left behind. The Azure Peking's killing intent soared with that, causing space to distort violently. He said coldly, no one is bold enough to use the method of contact we've left behind mindlessly. Since it has been used, someone must have found Jian Chen's traces. Where is he? The set of seals were not performed completely, but they're directly connected to me after all. At the moment they were used, the laws of the world will change slightly, and I'll be able to sense it with great precision. That place should be planet Tianming, said the solitary sword ancestor before immediately standing up. I'll be leaving first. The Azure Peking turned into a huge Azure Peng and shot off with great speed. In a flash, he crossed an unfathomable distance, disappearing into the depths of outer space. The solitary sword ancestor, on the other hand, directly sunk into the interior of the meteor. There was a teleportation formation powerful enough to transport people across planes in there. He stood in the center of the teleportation formation and tossed out a pile of 5-colored divine crystals before vanishing. They were extremely distant from planet Tianming, so there was a lot of ground to cover. He was not as fast as the Azure Peking, so the fastest method of travel for him was through teleportation formations. Chapter 2200, The Peking's Descent. Jian Chen and Su Ran returned to the imperial capital of the Thousand-Leaf Empire as quickly as they could. After calling Kaya, the three of them immediately hurried off to the teleportation formation cast down in the imperial capital. Kaya knew that Jian Chen's location had probably been exposed along the way, so she also became stern, realizing the severity of the matter. The three of them were silent along the way. They arrived before the teleportation formation very soon. Heya was already waiting around it with Qin Yishuan. Kaya naturally recognized Qin Yishuan with a single glance, and she was slightly surprised. She glanced at Jian Chen with much shock. Clearly, she too had never thought that she could encounter an acquaintance from the Tian Yuan continent on planet Tianming. However, Kaya and Qin Yishuan were not on any particular terms on the Tian Yuan continent, so they did not greet each other when they saw one another. Master, Heya brought Qin Yishuan to Jian Chen before standing behind him conscientiously. Where are we going next? Qin Yishuan looked at Su Ran, Jian Chen, and Kaya. She bit her lip gently as she said softly. She could see the sternness of the three of them with a single glance. In her eyes, Jian Chen was still that young Master Chang Yang that had a significant background. Clearly, something bad had happened for the young master to show such an expression. Qin Yishuan became rather uneasy as a result. Jian Chen and Kaya had already disguised themselves when they set foot on planet Tianming, so even until now, Qin Yishuan still had not discovered their real identities. Let's leave first. The two of you enter the divine hall, said Jian Chen. He took out a divine hall casually and let Heya and Qin Yishuan in before entering the teleportation formation with Kaya and Su Ran. With a flash, they vanished. After they vanished from the teleportation formation, the guards who watched the place immediately began to whisper to each other. It's forbidden for people to take others in spatial treasures when they use the teleportation formation. That's the rule of the Thousand Leaf Empire. Captain, why didn't we stop them? Shoo. Be quiet. Their background is just far too great, so great that our Thousand Leaf Empire cannot afford to provoke them. I received firm orders from the higher-ups earlier that we can't provoke them. I think one of them is some young Master Chang Yang. Young Master Chang Yang? Who's that? Why have I never heard of him? The captain said grimly. I don't know who young Master Chang Yang is either. Anyway, these were orders from the higher-ups. We just need to carry them out. We don't need to know the reason. The Feng Empire was one of the few eternal empires on planet Tianming. They possessed chaotic primes and were far more powerful than the Thousand Leaf Empire. On the entire Dark Sky planet, there were only 4 eternal empires like the Feng Empire. The Feng Empire ranked second among the 4 of them. On the square within a bustling city of the Feng Empire, the teleportation formations would flicker with white light from time to time, where cultivators would come and go basically at all times. At this moment, the light on one of the teleportation formations vanished, and Jian Chen, Kaya, and Su Ran appeared there. There are 6 known teleportation formations that can cross planes on planet Tianming. 4 of them are in the 4 eternal empires, while the other 2 are under the planet Lord's estate's control. The teleportation formation of the Feng Empire is located in its imperial capital, Su Ran said to Jian Chen and Kaya in the teleportation formation before taking Jian Chen and Kaya and hurrying off to the imperial city. A black-robed, burly middle-aged man sat boldly on a throne in a majestic hall within the planet Lord's estate, distant from the Feng Empire. He gave off a terrifyingly powerful presence, where it seemed like his burly body contained devastating energy. It seemed like he stood above the heavens, powerful enough to control all lives. He was the lord of planet Tianming, the existence who stood supreme there. He reigned over the entire place. Just when Jian Chen, Kaya, and Su Ran reached the Feng Empire, the planet lord's eyes suddenly narrowed. He frowned slightly as he seemed displeased. He murmured, "The Azure Pen King wants me to seal up the entire planet? Does the Azure Pen King think he stands supreme in the saints' world, to ask for something so overboard from me? Sealing up the planet is not something small. But the Azure Pen King is infamous for his pettiness. He'll take offense over tiny things and remember it for the rest of his life. Whatever, I'll just do it for him this time. Seal up the entire planet immediately. Get the 4 empires to close their teleportation formations to other planes." The planet lord immediately passed down orders. Although he was reluctant, he dared not offend the Azure Pen King over such a puny matter. The planet lord's orders reached the 4 eternal empires in the shortest amount of time possible. The 4 empires dared not disobey or tarry with carrying out the orders, so they did it as quickly as possible. Immediately, the defensive formation of planet Tianming was activated. No one could leave the planet and fly into space anymore, while the teleportation formations in the 4 empires were shut down at basically the same time. Oh no! Planet Tianming has been sealed up. Su Ran's face suddenly changed, and she stared at the sky gravely. Jian Chen's face also changed suddenly from that. He called out, "Go to the teleportation formation." The 3 of them immediately rushed over to where the planar teleportation formations were. However, when they arrived there, their faces became very ugly. The only planar teleportation formation in the Feng Empire had already been shut down. Only the teleportation formations for locations on planet Tianming still functioned. Jian Chen's heart sank. He had realized that the sudden closure of the teleportation formations and the sealing of the planet had to do with him being exposed. We're in trouble now. Once the solitary sword ancestor and the Azure Peking learn that you're on planet Tianming, it'll be impossible for us to shake off the two of them even if I charge through the seal with you and flee into outer space, even if I was at my peak condition. Moreover, the Azure Pengking's speed is basically unrivaled. There is barely anyone in the Saints' world that can match up to him, and it's the same with chasing down people. No one will be able to escape from him. Su Ran became grimmer than she had ever been. Just when Su Ran finished talking, a terrifying presence radiated from the sky above in a mighty manner, enveloping the entire planet. Before the suffocating presence, all of the space where the planet occupied twisted drastically. Even the sky seemed like it was about to collapse. An extremely huge shadow had appeared near planet Tianming silently. Even compared to the planet itself, it was not much smaller. This was the Azure Peking in his original form. His colossal, planet-sized body was simply breathtaking. Chapter 2201, Dire Straits. The Azure Peking had arrived in person. His colossal figure arrived in space, deeply shocking everyone on planet Tianming. At that moment, countless people stared at the sky. From the planet, they looked at the huge, azure peng that blotted out the sky. They were all stunned. At the same time, all the primordial realm experts in the Feng Empire were alarmed. All of them stopped what they were doing and emerged from seclusion, hovering in the air as they stared at the sky sternly. In various places across planet Tianming, a few ancient existences who had once caused quite the ruckus awakened from their slumber. They roused from seclusion and also hovered in the sky, staring at the Azure Peking sternly. Publicly renowned as the most powerful expert on planet Tianming, the planet lord slowly made his way out from his hall. He stood outside as he stared at the Azure Peking, who had come from outer space. He frowned, and then he murmured, "The Azure Peking sent me a message just earlier to get me to seal up planet Tianming. Only a few seconds have passed, and he has already arrived here. His speed truly is terrifying. But what I don't understand is what could make the Azure Peking care so much, going as far as traveling such a great distance to come to this planet personally. Perhaps Jian Chen, who he and the solitary sword ancestor are searching for, is on my dark sky planet?" As he thought that, the planet lord had already taken a step. He crossed through space and appeared outside the protective formations like he had teleported. He hovered before the Azure Peking from a distance. The Azure Peking did not shrink himself, so when the planet lord stood before his planet-sized body, the planet lord really did seem as insignificant as an ant. "Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance, may I ask what has angered you so much? There are many prodigies from various places on my dark sky planet. They're all innocent, and they can't endure your pressure," the planet lord said to the Azure Peking with clasped hands. He smiled warmly, clearly showing some respect towards the Azure Peking. The Azure Peking had used his presence to envelop the planet right from the start. No matter what his reason for doing that was, it was basically provoking the entire planet. As the master of planet Tianming, the planet lord had to stand forward. However, due to how powerful the Azure Peking was, he dared not truly offend him. "Jian Chen, who this king is searching for, is on the planet. Open the formation immediately," said the Azure Peking. His voice was cold and filled with killing intent. He spoke like it was an order, leaving no room for others to talk back. As he said that, his colossal body rapidly shrunk as he turned back into a middle-aged man in azure robes. His face was sickly pale. The Azure Peking is clearly injured, and his wounds aren't light. It looks like it's true that he was injured by the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng. The planet lord was secretly surprised when he saw the haggardness on the Azure Peking's face. However, he showed none of it on his face. Immediately, he opened the formations around the planet and sighed emotionally, I never thought that the famous Jian Chen would be on my tiny planet. However, Jian Chen is no ordinary person either. It's said that he has close ties with the God clan, where the little war god of the God clan treats him like a brother. He said that he would protect Jian Chen, forcing many peak organizations who resent Jian Chen to give up on their hunt for him. After all, the God clan was once the greatest clan in the Saints' world. Even though they've declined now, their heritage runs so deep that they still cannot be underestimated. Moreover, there's a young man from the heavenly palace of Bisheng called Ming Dong. I heard that his relationship with Jian Chen is anything but ordinary as well. Rumors about Ming Dong are everywhere in the Saints' world now. It's said that he's either the 8th Majesty's disciple or the 1st Majesty's disciple. Sigh, Jian Chen's status really is extraordinary. The Planet Lord also loathed the Azure Peng King's condescending attitude, so he mentioned Ming Dong as well as the 8th and 1st Majesties of the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng to secretly scoff at him. He had even mentioned the God clan. His intentions were naturally to point out how the Azure Peng King treated himself with so much importance that he would not even respect the God clan. The Azure Peng King glanced at the Planet Lord coldly before directly flying towards the planet. What you said then was extremely likely to anger the Azure Peng King. Are you unafraid that the Azure Peng King will resent you because of this? 6 figures appeared silently behind the Planet Lord after the Azure Peng King had left. They varied in age, and they all seemed like ordinary people. However, their eyes were so profound that they seemed to hold a universe within them. The Azure Peng King was ordering me. He directly passed an order to me. He's far too haughty. I'm also a Grand Prime, just like him. He has his pride, but that doesn't mean I don't have mine. I can yield to him a little, but I will never bow down to him. The Planet Lord's face had also sunk. You're right. The Azure Peng King has indeed been too haughty. He hasn't taken our planet seriously at all. If it were the solitary sword ancestor, I'd naturally have nothing to say, but the Azure Peng King is unable to make me act like that willingly, an old man said emotionlessly. It's the infamous Azure Peng King. We're in deep trouble now. Su Ran became extremely stern in the Feng Empire. Beside her, Jian Chen's face became extremely sunken as well. The light in his eyes flickered as he tried to think of a way to deal with the Azure Peng King. Kaiya's expression also became rather uneasy. She clung onto Jian Chen's arm tightly as she felt anxious. Before the Azure Peng King, all of your disguises are useless. After all, the difference between your cultivation levels is just too great. Also, the senses of a Grand Prime soul can easily envelop the entire planet, Su Ran said to Jian Chen secretly as she was worried for the two of them. Jian Chen's heart sank even more from that. The senses of the Azure Peng King's soul could envelop the entire planet. That meant that anything that happened on the planet, even just grass waving in the wind, would not be able to escape the Azure Peng King's senses. He was truly unable to hide on planet Tianming. Senior Su, Kaiya, enter my divine hall. Jian Chen made up his mind on the spot. He dared not expose the Inata Tower at a place like this, so he could only take out an inconspicuous divine hall. At the same time, he clenched his last cosmic movement talisman. Currently, this was the only method of escape he could think of. However, before Jian Chen could let Su Ran and Kaiya into the divine hall, terrifying senses of the soul swept over, engulfing the entire planet. The planet seemed to stop as it was enveloped. Everything seemed to fall silent while origin energy seemed to freeze in that instance. All the cultivators below the primordial realm felt like their bodies had become restrained by a mysterious power that completely immobilized them. This was the senses of a Grand Prime soul. It could easily interfere with the operations of the world and control the lives of everyone. Oh no! Jian Chen realized the horrible situation. Under the senses of the soul, a bone-chilling sensation rose up from the bottom of his heart. He felt like he had been thrown into a cavern of ice. Jian Chen, this king would like to see where you escape off to. No one can save you today. At the same time, an icy voice rang out loudly. The Azure Pen King had appeared silently in the air above the Feng Empire. He stared at Jian Chen coldly. No matter how Jian Chen hid, he was unable to disguise himself before the Azure Pen King. He was recognized in a single glance. Chapter 2202. A Grand Prime's Pursuit. Jian Chen immediately felt that an extremely powerful presence had locked onto him. The space around him seemed to seize up at that moment, cascading down on him. Not only did his body feel as heavy as a mountain, where he struggled to even lift his leg, but he even felt like a boulder crushed down on his chest, preventing him from breathing. Grand Primes are actually so terrifying. Jian Chen was extremely shocked. The presence from the Azure Pen King made his heart shiver. If it were not for the fact that his chaotic body had reached the 13th layer, increasing his strength by several times over, he probably would not be able to even raise a finger before the Azure Pen King's pressure. He felt a presence of death with great clarity from the Azure Pen King. He knew that even after breaking through to the 13th layer, he was still as insignificant as an ant before the Azure Pen King. I never thought Jian Chen would really be on planet Tianming. The planet lord hovered in outer space and stared at Jian Chen in surprise. Jian Chen is done for unless the experts of the God clan step forward. Jian Chen still has a talisman in his hand. It looks like he wants to flee, but unfortunately, it's impossible for him to do that before the Azure Pen King with his current strength because he won't even have the opportunity to activate the talisman. The little war god of the God clan has said that nothing can happen to Jian Chen. I wonder if the Azure Pen King would really kill Jian Chen or not. I do hope for Jian Chen to die to the hands of the Azure Pen King so that I can see the God clan's response. If the God clan can teach the Azure Pen King a lesson, it'll be quite the delight. The people of various ages around the planet lord all stared at Jian Chen in interest as they discussed. Azure Pen King, you actually want to personally harass a junior with your status. If this makes it out, it'll probably damage your name, Su Ran said with an ugly expression. She was unable to protect Jian Chen either now that the Azure Pen King had come in person. The only thing she could do was warn the Azure Pen King about his status. Unfortunately, the Azure Pen King's temper was not logical. Such a concept did not exist in his head at all. Su Ran's words did not make the Azure Pen King's determination to kill Jian Chen waver at all. Mo Cheng was the disciple that this king placed the greatest hopes on. Since his death is related to you, you're also one of the people responsible. Even if the people of the God clan come to plead for mercy, they can't protect you, the Azure Pen King growled. Killing intent soared from his body as he directly extended a finger towards Jian Chen's forehead. His gesture was only a very casual attack, but the world seemed to pale while the ground rumbled before it. It was as if his gesture had replaced the heavens, becoming a will that completely surpassed the heavens, enough to control everything. Even the thought of resisting became impossible. Moreover, the terrifying attack from the gesture not only enveloped Jian Chen, but Kaya was not spared either. She also became a target for the Azure Pen King's attack. Clearly, the Azure Pen King did not even plan on letting Kaya go. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed as he experienced a sense of danger greater than anything before. Chills ran down his spine. The Azure Pen King was just too terrifying and too powerful. Before him, Jian Chen did not even have the chance to activate the Cosmic Movement Talisman. At that critical moment, a damaged tower covered in sword slashes suddenly appeared. Like a shield, it stood before Jian Chen. Boom! The Azure Pen King's attack struck the damaged tower with unimaginably terrifying force. It erupted with an ear-splitting boom as devastating energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings in the form of a storm. Space directly shattered, becoming covered with web-like cracks. The imperial capital of the Feng Empire was as fragile as paper before the energy. Countless structures collapsed in waves, while the protective formation only lasted for a few seconds before shattering loudly. Instantly, the majestic and prosperous imperial capital of the Feng Empire was reduced to a shape that bore no resemblance to its prior state. It had basically completely fallen into ruins. The cultivators who moved about in the city either became injured or dead. countless people had their lives cut short. Only a few people with impressive strength managed to survive. The damaged tower had been knocked away quickly by the Azure Penking's strike. Although Jian Shen managed to block the Azure Penking's attack completely by hiding behind it, his organs were thrown into turmoil when the tower collided into him. Many of his bones broke while his blood surged, forcing him to spit out a mouthful of blood uncontrollably in the end. Jian Shen was already standing before Kaya, so she was fine. The appearance of the damaged tower made the Azure Penking's eyes narrow suddenly. His unwavering heart began to pound uncontrollably at that moment as undisguised delight filled his eyes. The Inata Tower. It's actually the Inata Tower. The Azure Penking recognized the tower with a single glance. His cold eyes now burned with desire. He temporarily forgot about Jian Shen and flashed forwards right towards the Inata Tower. That tower seems to be, at the same time, the Planet Lord's originally sunken face from the Azure Peking destroying the imperial capital suddenly became stunned. His eyes shone brightly as he became fixated on the damaged tower. The eyes of the peak experts who basically stood on the same level as the Planet Lord also lit up. All of their eyes lit up in that instance as they stared at the tower without blinking at all. It's the Inata Tower. It can't be wrong. It's definitely the Inata Tower. The Inata Tower is the Inata Grand Exalt's famed treasure. It's a renowned god artifact of the saints' world. There are even rumors that the Inata Tower has actually appeared with Jian Shen. This is completely unbelievable. Whether it was the Planet Lord or the peak experts beside him, flames of desire sprang up in their eyes in the instance they recognized the Inata Tower. They were all interested. Then they looked at one another, and after gritting their teeth, they all charged towards the Inata Tower. They understood that once they took part, they would be offending the Azure Peking, and it was likely that the Azure Peking would hunt them down relentlessly. However, the Inata Tower was just worth far too much. It was enough for them to even go as far as becoming enemies with the Azure Peking. Once they obtained the Inata Tower, they could offer it up to the heavenly palace of Bisheng, and it would be a service of great merit. The merit would be so great that they might even be able to ask the First Majesty of the heavenly palace of Bisheng to personally kill the Azure Peking, and there would still be more to spare. They could use the remaining merit to exchange for benefits that satisfied them from the heavenly palace of Bisheng. The Planet Lord and the others were nowhere near as fast as the Azure Peking, but they were also grand primes after all. The distance between them and Jian Shen was basically non-existent. With a single step, they all appeared around the Inata Tower. You're looking to die. The Azure Peking's killing intent soared when he saw how they wanted to take something from him. At a time like this, he could no longer care about Jian Shen. Bellowing out coldly, he directly attacked the Planet Lord and so on. In his eyes, Jian Shen was an insignificant existence. Even if there were 100 or 1,000 Jian Shens, it was still nowhere enough to tempt him more than the Inata Tower. As a result, his main objective became obtaining the Inata Tower now. It was also at this moment that Jian Shen finally had enough time to activate the Cosmic Movement Talisman. He had no time to wait for Kaya to enter the Inata Tower. When every second mattered, he directly wrapped his right hand around Kaya's thin waist tightly and grabbed the Inata Tower after it had shrunk. Surrounded by the power from the talisman, he vanished. Do you think that you can escape from this king? The Azure Peking sneered when he saw Jian Shen flee. He extended a hand, and a droplet of blood immediately flew over from afar, floating in his hand. The droplet of blood was Jian Shen's chaotic blood. You will pay for your foolish actions today. The Azure Peking glanced at the Planet Lord and so on coldly before looking at the droplet of blood in his hand. He smiled happily for some reason. As long as I have your blood, I can find you with ease even if you flee to the ends of the world. With that, the Azure Peking immediately shot off into the distance. He unleashed his extreme speed, disappearing into the cosmos. Su Ran floated above the ruins of the Feng Empire in a rather horrible shape. She thought, the Inata Tower has been exposed. They're in trouble now. And the Azure Pen King has a droplet of Jian Chen's blood. He just needs to use a secret technique with Jian Chen's blood as a medium, and he would be able to find Jian Chen's location with absolute ease. It'll be very difficult for Jian Chen to escape. Even if he hides in the Inata Tower, there'll be traces of him. It looks like I can only pay a visit to the heavenly palace of Bisheng. Even though I really don't like that place, perhaps this is the only way to save Jian Chen from the Azure Pen King. Chapter 2203, Fleeing into a crack after making up her mind, Su Ran set off immediately. The Feng Empire had already been reduced to ruins, and even the imperial capital had not been spared. Naturally, the teleportation formation there had been destroyed. She hurried off to a second Eternal Empire to use their planar teleportation formation so that she could reach the heavenly palace of Bisheng sooner. Now we've done it. We've made a huge mistake. Now, not only will we be hunted down by the Azure Pen King relentlessly, but even our clans will be dragged into it. The peak experts of planet Tianming and the planet Lord gathered together with extremely ugly expressions. They had truly gone for wool and come back shorn. Not only did they fail to obtain the Inata Tower, but they had even offended the Azure Pen King as well. Since Jian Chen has fled with the Inata Tower, trying to hunt him down will be completely useless. Even if we ignore the fact that we can't find Jian Chen as easily as the Azure Pen King, it's impossible for us to match up to the Azure Pen King in terms of speed. Let's think about how to deal with the Azure Pen King's revenge instead. The Azure Pen King is someone who will always seek revenge even for the smallest of things. He will never just let what happened today go, immediately send people to the heavenly palace of Bisheng. Although we can't hand the Inata Tower to them personally, if we're the first people to inform them about the Inata Tower, it'll be a matter of great merit as well. In a region of space extremely distant from planet Tianming, the calm space there suddenly rippled like water. In the next moment, it suddenly warped violently, and two figures suddenly appeared out of nowhere as if they had teleported. The two of them were Jian Chen and Kaya, who had fled here through the cosmic movement talisman. Spurt. As soon as they appeared, Jian Chen could not help but spray out blood from his mouth again. His face became rather pale. Jian Chen, are you fine? Are your wounds heavy? Kaya asked in concern. Immediately, she wanted to support Jian Chen. However, as soon as she moved, she discovered that Jian Chen's arm was wrapped around her waist tightly. It was powerful, preventing her from moving. Sensing the power and warmth from Jian Chen's arm, Kaya struggled to remain calm. Her heart pounded in a rather uncontrollable manner as the depths of her heart wavered. Sensing Kaya's movement, Jian Chen immediately released his hand around her. Under such a tight situation before, it was impossible for Kaya to enter the Inata Tower in time. As a result, he could only grab her tightly and flee through the cosmic movement talisman. He had no other intentions apart from that. The light in Kaya's eyes rippled as she looked at Jian Chen with some mixed feelings. She said in a voice filled with concern, "Here's a god-tier heavenly resource for recovery. Eat it quickly and stabilize your wounds." As she said that, Kaya took out a heavenly resource she had obtained from her share in the Neptunian Divine Palace and passed it to Jian Chen. At the same time, Kaya opened her hand, and an invisible suction immediately appeared. She gathered all of Jian Chen's chaotic blood in the surroundings, condensing the blood into a thumb-sized droplet in her hand in the end. I know you exhaust a tremendous amount of cultivation resources for each breakthrough. Your blood contains a portion of your energy, so every droplet you lose will mean that you lose a portion of your energy. You can't waste this blood. As she said that, Kaya slowly raised her hand and made the droplet of blood approach Jian Chen's mouth. Jian Chen looked at the droplet of blood and nodded slightly. Sucking gently, he swallowed all of the blood and said, "My injuries are no big deal. I'll be able to make a complete recovery before long." As he said that, he paused and looked at the space behind him. His face became extremely stern as he said gravely, "I once heard that the Azure Pen King is unmatched in terms of speed. Although we've managed to escape with the cosmic movement talisman, I have a strong feeling that we're not safe right now. The Azure Pen King should catch up very soon. Kaya also dismissed her thoughts when she heard that. She became stern and growled, with our speed, it's impossible to escape from the Azure Pen King if we hurry through outer space. The Azure Pen King should have many methods to find us, so it looks like we can only enter a spatial crack to avoid being hunted down. You're right. It is chaotic within a spatial crack, where even the laws of the world are affected. Even if the Azure Pen King is a Grand Prime, he'll be impacted to a certain degree in a spatial crack. Moreover, we have the Inata Tower with us, so we don't have to worry about the spatial storms at all. We can just charge through them fearlessly. To us right now, it really might be a place where we can shake off Grand Primes. Jian Chen's eyes lit up, and he immediately took out the 9-star sword of heavenly ways. He said to Kaya, let's not tarry and enter right now. However, I won't be able to rip through space alone. Kaya, I need your assistance. We need to unleash our full strengths and rip through the space here. Alright, Kaya nodded in agreement before standing beside Jian Chen and striking out with her full strength. The laws of creation, destruction, and fire were all used. The 3 different types of laws were combined perfectly by her, forming a glyph that she sent towards the space before her. At the same time, Jian Chen's sword shone with dazzling starlight. Huge, illusionary stars were conjured one after another. With a force no weaker than the primordial realm, he struck the space before him. Jian Chen and Kaya had unleashed their most powerful attacks at the same time, causing the space before them to tremble. A meter-long crack suddenly appeared. Enter the tower. Jian Chen called out. With a flash, the 2 of them entered the Inata Tower. He controlled the tower to shrink to the size of a fist before passing through the crack. The crack closed up by itself soon after the Inata Tower had entered it. It returned to normal, causing the region of space to recover its previous peace. However, this peace did not last for too long before being shattered once again. A dazzling azure light flickered in the depths of space, heading straight towards where Jian Chen had vanished. The azure light was just too fast. It was unbelievably fast. The moment before, it was still in the depths of space, but in the next moment, it had arrived at Jian Chen's previous location, crossing the insurmountable distance as if it had teleported. The azure figure happened to be the Azure Pen King who was in hot pursuit. Jian Chen's traces have actually vanished here? The Azure Pen King hovered in the sea of stars alone as he stared at the chaotic blood in his hand for a while. The tremendous senses of his soul immediately flooded out, enveloping an entire galaxy. But very soon, he frowned. He discovered nothing with the senses of his soul. He failed to find Jian Chen's traces at all. He had even used a secret technique with the droplet of chaotic blood after arriving here, but he failed to find any trace of Jian Chen either. It was as if Jian Chen had vanished from the universe. Humph, you're dreaming if you want to escape right before me. The Azure Pen King snorted coldly. His eyes were extremely icy. Then he closed his eyes and fused his soul with the world, using his Grand Prime level comprehension of laws to peer into the past and the future. So you've hidden in a spatial crack. Aren't you far too naive to think that you can escape from me like that? I have to get the Inata Tower before the solitary sword ancestor arrives. The Azure Pen King opened his eyes very soon and sneered. He split open space easily, and with a flash, he disappeared into the spatial crack. Chapter 2204, Temporal Vortex. Violent streams of energy and spatial storms filled the spatial crack, along with terrifying temporal vortices. There was danger as far as the eye could see. Even the slightest carelessness could result in damnation. Even primordial realm experts had to be careful and cautious here. Otherwise, even primordial realm experts would die here. There was a fist-sized damaged tower covered in slashes within this danger-ridden spatial crack. It turned into a faint streak of golden light as it charged through the various powerful streams of energy and space-distorting storms recklessly. It advanced in an unstoppable manner. It was as if the spatial crack that was enough to cause many primordial realm experts to pale and tread lightly posed no threat to the tiny tower at all. The tiny tower would only avoid the temporal vortices that could twist time. Naturally, it was the Inata Tower. Jian Shen and Kaya currently sat in the Inata Tower with their eyes closed. Jian Shen's entire mind had fused with the Inata Tower completely as he used all his efforts to control the Inata Tower's flight through the spatial crack. He knew that the Azure Pen King would catch up very soon, so he dared not be careless. Even when they had successfully entered the spatial crack, which gave them a special advantage as the laws were chaotic and incomplete, weakening the Azure Pen King's abilities drastically, he still could not stop worrying. As a result, he did not even try to heal. He spent all his efforts on piloting the Inata Tower. Kaya sat beside Jian Shen with her eyes closed. She also sensed the situation outside the Inata Tower through her own method. The Inata Tower was an impressive god artifact. Its interior had become its own, independent miniature world. Logically speaking, no one should be able to sense the situation outside from within the tower apart from Jian Shen, who had refined a fraction of the tower. Yet, Kaya was an exception. Although she had not refined the Inata Tower like Jian Shen or even gained any control over it before, she could clearly sense everything outside despite being in the tower. Strange. Why do I feel like I can control the tower like Jian Shen? This really is a strange feeling. Kaya felt extremely puzzled. She completely had no idea why she would feel that. At that moment, she even felt an urge to try to control the Inata Tower. However, when she saw how Jian Shen was piloting the Inata Tower, she could only suppress this urge. I seem to have a connection with the tower that even I can't explain. This feeling didn't exist in the beginning. As my strength rapidly increased, this feeling slowly appeared, and it's becoming stronger and stronger. Kaya furrowed her brows, but no matter how she racked her brain, she still had no idea in the end. At this moment, Kaya's heart suddenly tightened. In that instance, she felt like her soul had strengthened, where her connection with the Inata Tower grew stronger. A sliver of her consciousness seemed to drift out of the Inata Tower, allowing her to see an azure streak of light pursue them with unbelievable speed. Currently, it was still extremely far behind them. It's the Azure Pen King. He's actually this fast. Kaya's heart tightened. She opened her eyes and looked at Jian Shen and knew that he had not discovered the Azure Pen King. However, the Azure Pen King was just too fast. He had turned into an Azure Peng that was only 2 meters in size. With a flap of his wings, he could cross a tremendous distance. Space seemed to fold up before him. When Kaya discovered him, he was still hundreds of million kilometers away from the Inata Tower, but in just a few seconds, he appeared a few million kilometers away, and he was rapidly growing closer. Oh no, the Azure Pen King is coming, Kaya immediately warned Jian Shen. Jian Shen opened his eyes when he heard that. He glanced at her suspiciously. He was aware of the outside world at all times. It was impossible for anything that happened within a range of several 100,000 kilometers to escape his senses, yet he had failed to discover the Azure Pen King. Even though he was very confused about how Kaya was able to determine that the Azure Pen King was coming, he trusted her completely, so without any hesitation, he changed the direction of the Inata Tower and headed towards an even more dangerous region. Just as the Inata Tower had turned, a huge hand completely condensed from energy suddenly appeared. With terrifying might, it grabbed at the space where the Inata Tower was prior. Due to being so close, Jian Shen saw the hand that had suddenly appeared with great clarity as well. This made his face change. If he had not changed the direction of the Inata Tower in time, the tower really would have ended up in the grasp of the energy hand. Jian Shen understood that although the Azure Pen King was unable to destroy the Inata Tower, he was a Grand Prime who stood at the apex after all. As a result, his abilities were so exceptional that they would be facing a horrible situation if the tower ended up in his hands. Afterwards, Jian Shen advanced by zigzagging. He went where danger was present, emboldened by the toughness of the Inata Tower. There has never been someone who has escaped from me once they've caught my eye. Even if you choose a special place like this and restrict my abilities to a certain extent, you still can't escape from me, the Azure Pen King sneered in the form of a small bird behind them. Even though spatial cracks were enough to threaten primordial realm experts, he was an existence who stood at the apex of the Saints' world. He had great capabilities and was extremely powerful. There was nothing in spatial cracks that could pose a threat to him. It would only obstruct him slightly at most. The Azure Pen King flapped his wings, and immediately, they glowed with azure light, which turned into a violent gust of wind. The gale possessed unimaginable power. All the chaotic streams of energy and spatial storms that blocked the Azure Pen King's way collapsed from the gale like a pile of leaves. Space shook violently. The residual power of the gale caught up with the Inata Tower, causing it to tremble and totter. It was tossed around constantly in space. Jian Shen struggled to control it. The Inata Tower immediately slowed down. The Azure Pen King, on the other hand, used this opportunity to close the distance. From over 1,000,000 kilometers away, he arrived around 1,000 kilometers away from the tower. In the Inata Tower, Jian Shen's face sank. Then he shifted his target towards a nearby temporal vortex and immediately made up his mind, charging over with the Inata Tower. Jian Shen had always feared the temporal vortices within spatial cracks. Even with the Inata Tower, he dared not tread in them. This was because he had already witnessed the power of temporal vortices in the past. He deeply understood that the flow of time within them was extremely unstable. He was afraid that several tens of thousand years would pass in an instant if he fell into one, where the outside world had already changed when he emerged again. Or perhaps time would run backwards and change him into a newly born infant, the very basis of life, or even to nothingness. But now, he was out of choices with the Azure Pen King's close pursuit. Swish! The Inata Tower directly entered the temporal vortex as a faint golden streak of light. Chapter 2205. The Heavenless Demon exult. When the Azure Pen King saw how Jian Shen actually charged into a temporal vortex without any consideration for his personal safety, he scoffed. Temporal vortices could indeed pose life-threatening danger to other primordial realm experts, but with his current level of cultivation, he had stopped fearing them since a long time ago. The Azure Pen King tailed them closely and also charged into the temporal vortex. But very soon, the Azure Pen King was stunned. He discovered that the Inata Tower he had locked onto had suddenly vanished from his vision as soon as he entered the temporal vortex. God damn it! The Azure Pen King could not help but swear to himself. He knew better than anyone else that he had been affected by the temporal vortex. It seemed like he had entered the vortex at basically the same time as the Inata Tower, but the period of time he experienced in there was completely different from what the Inata Tower experienced. In that split second, he might have stayed in the temporal vortex for a very long time already, which was why the Inata Tower had suddenly vanished. The Azure Pen King flapped his wings violently and charged towards outside with extreme speed. At the same time, extremely great power of laws wrapped around him to fend off the incoming temporal changes. At this moment, if someone was standing outside of the temporal vortex, they would discover that the Azure Pen King seemed to be in slow motion, flapping his wings at an extremely gradual rate. He seemed no faster than a snail. Just when the Azure Pen King was about to charge out of the temporal vortex, the streams of energy nearby suddenly became extremely violent. The temporal vortices in the surroundings seemed to experience some sort of attraction, drawn over from all directions around the Azure Pen King. Several dozen of them formed a huge temporal storm. It was on a magnificent scale, trapping the Azure Pen King inside. It seemed like the temporal vortices had been purposefully gathered by a huge, mysterious hand to target the Azure Pen King. Regardless of the direction in which the Azure Pen King charged off in, he would run into a second, third, and fourth temporal vortex. Even though these temporal vortices posed no threat or harm to the Azure Pen King at all, it did keep him busy and temporarily trapped there. Although the Prosper Plane was one of the 49 planes of the Saints' world, it was so powerful that it completely exceeded the other planes. Out of the 49 planes and 81 planets, it was one of the few, peak planes. This was because the heavenly palace of Bisheng was located on the Prosper Plain. Not only was the heavenly palace of Bisheng the name of an organization, but it was also one of the Inata Grand Prime's 3 great treasures. The Inata Grand Prime was also one of the 7 grand exalts of the current Saint's world, where his cultivation had reached the peak of Grand Prime, becoming an existence akin to the laws themselves. He would always reside on the Prosper Plane to cultivate, subconsciously affecting the operation of the world and impacting its order such that the laws of the world on the Prosper Plane were even thicker and clearer. Hence, people could comprehend them with great ease. It gave birth to wave after wave of experts. As time went on, the Prosper Plane became one of the few peak planes of the Saints' world. Organizations like everlasting empires and peak clans were nothing rare on the Prosper Plane. As for the heavenly palace of Bisheng, it was the sacred land of all the cultivators on the Prosper Plane. They possessed a supreme status there. At this moment, a figure shrouded by a hazy glow was standing before a lake within the majestic heavenly palace of Bisheng in the center of the Prosper Plane. The laws of the world condensed around him such that he seemed like he had truly become a part of the laws and the world, becoming the supreme overlord of the universe. Every single word and action represented the will of the world. The lake before the person did not show clear water. Instead, it showed a multicolored space of chaos that was filled with streams of energy and spatial storms. It showed what was happening in the spatial crack. The most attention-grabbing part of the spatial crack was how several dozen temporal vortices had gathered together, trapping an azure bird that had shrunken to the size of 2 meters. Master, I saw the important figures of planet Tianming come with their planet lord earlier. They stated that they wanted to see the First Majesty. The First Majesty, however, is currently under Master's orders to collect senior ancient path's soul fragments, so she isn't present. As a result, I could only report this to Master. An old voice rang out from outside. It was the artifact spirit of the heavenly palace of Bisheng. The artifact spirit could control everything inside the heavenly palace of Bisheng, where he could understand anything that was happening inside with a single thought. However, the entire region where the shrouded figure stood clearly was not something that the artifact spirit could sense. He did not know what was happening there either. After a slight pause, the artifact spirit continued politely, "The news they bring is rather important. They seem to know the whereabouts of Master's treasure. Let them return," the hazy figure by the lake said. His voice was icy and emotionless, and it also seemed to possess all the sounds of the world, making it impossible to distinguish the figure's gender. "Yes, Master." The artifact spirit backed away politely. "My 4th way has already developed a basic form. Before long, it will truly take shape," the shrouded figure murmured gently. With a gentle wave of his hand, the world reflected by the lake changed. The scene of the spatial crack vanished, and countless worlds flashed by. Even the world where the Tian Yuan continent resided in flashed past. "I've already searched through the entire Saint's world in all these years. I've looked through millions of Lower's worlds as well, but I've failed to find your trace. Flame Reverend, just where are you hiding?" As the only everlasting empire on the cloud plane, the Tian Empire did indeed possess terrifying, unshakable strength. They were especially frightening. Apart from the Heaven's Link Peak, no peak clan or organization on the cloud plane could make its status waver. At this moment, in the depths of the imperial palace of the Tian Empire, 3 ancient towers that reached into the clouds stood like silent pillars that held up the sky. The 3 ancient towers were where the pride of the Tian Empire resided, as well as where the reason why the Tian Empire could exist was. It represented their absolute power. But at this moment, black clouds abruptly rolled out from one of the ancient towers. Laws gathered as a terrifying presence suddenly swept out, engulfing the entire central region in a single instance before spreading towards the 4 other regions. It caused the entire sky to pulse with instability. The heavenless demon Exalt has actually broken through. At the same time, 2 old men silently appeared on top of the 2 other towers. They stared at the tower shrouded in demonic aura in delight. "Fantastic. The heavenless demon Exalt has broken through successfully and has reached the 4th heavenly layer. He has formally made it to Mid-Grand Prime. He has become the only Mid-Grand Prime on the Cloud Plane. I'd like to see how the Lord of Heaven's Link Peak plans on stopping our Tian clan from conquering the entire Cloud Plane now. The other old man was also overjoyed as he said in high spirits. Chapter 2206. Movements in the Dark. One of the two old men was an ancestral emperor who had abdicated many years ago, while the other was the first imperial protector since the Tian Empire's founding. The two of them were the most ancient existences of the Tian Empire. They had reached Grand Prime many years ago and were peak experts who stood at the apex of the plane. At this moment, the demonic aura around the tower where the heavenless demon Exalt resided receded, revealing a black figure in the demonic clouds. He was a black-robed middle-aged man with a rather cold and malevolent expression. He hovered in the air like a sovereign of the world as a supreme presence radiated from him. The presence was so powerful that the world seemed to pale and space seemed to distort. It seemed like he had already become the ruler of the world, where his eyes possessed a sense of coldness that looked down on all lives. This person was the heavenless demon Exalt as well as the second imperial protector since the founding of the Tian Empire. Right when the heavenless demon Exalt broke through, a ruddy, sagely old man sat on the ground on the peak of a mountain clad in formations with origin energy so abundant that it almost condensed into liquid. He focused on explaining the laws of the world and the mysteries of the cosmos to an old man in blood-red robes. Every single word and action from him seemed to represent the truths of the world, enough to resonate with the laws. The laws seemed to be rumbling and revolving around him. Suddenly, a bright light flashed through the old man's eyes. In that instance, his gaze became as profound as the universe. He stared into the distance as he abruptly became stern. Something terrible has happened. I never thought the heavenless demon Exalt of the Tian Empire would actually break through. The Cloud Plane will no longer be at peace. The ruddy, sagely old man stood up and said sternly while he gazed into the distance. Peak Lord, what has happened? The red-robed old man also stood up as he asked cautiously. Something major is about to happen on the Cloud Plane. Peak organizations might vanish from history. However, this has nothing to do with you. Houston, all you need to do is cultivate here in peace and wait for that person, the sagely old man referred to as the Peak Lord said. He was the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. He possessed extremely great status on the Cloud Plane. Houston became stern when he heard that. After a moment of silence, he asked, will the Tian Yuan clan be dragged into whatever happens this time? The Tian Yuan clan will be able to avoid it. After all, with their strength, they have no right to get involved. Unfortunately, the Tian Yuan clan is connected to the Shi clan of the northern region. The Peak Lord sighed gently. Peak Lord, I want to return to the Tian Yuan clan immediately. Houston immediately made up his mind. Once you leave, you'll be in great danger. Houston, before that person arrives, just cultivate here in peace. I won't let you take a single step away from this place, the Peak Lord said firmly. He left no room for discussion. At the same time, many peak existences hidden across the ancient lands of the Cloud Plane roused from seclusion. They all looked towards the Tian Empire in the central region. They were either grave or filled with eagerness and excitement. The heavenless demon Exalt has actually broken through. The Tian clan is filled with wild ambition. They've never given up on conquering the entire Cloud Plane. Only the Lord of Heaven's Link Peak prevented them from acting recklessly. Now that the heavenless demon Exalt has broken through, the Tian clan will truly possess the power to suppress the Peak Lord. No one can stop the advance of the Tian clan on the Cloud Plane anymore. Extremely powerful senses of the soul crossed the regions in various places of the Cloud Plane and discussed with one another. At the same time, a majestic divine hall stood silently like a primordial beast in an unknown space extremely distant from the Cloud Plane. It gave off a terrifying presence that was enough to frighten the world. The divine hall seemed to suppress an entire region of the world. When it stood there, the independent, unknown space seemed to submit itself to the divine hall, kneeling below the divine hall's feet. At this moment, a rather stern voice suddenly rang out from a gloomy secret room at the top of the divine hall. Something big is about to happen on the cloud plane. Even I might get involved in this. It looks like I can't let her remain there any longer. After a period of silence, the voice suddenly yelled out, "Qingming, come see me immediately." The voice was not loud, but it reached every inch of the divine hall. With that, a black-robed old man silently appeared outside the secret room. He bowed politely and said, "Greetings to Master. Go to the cloud plane immediately and bring her to me from the southern region safely. This is an image of her and her presence. With your cultivation, you should be able to sense her immediately when you reach the cloud plane." As he said that, a stream of consciousness flowed out from the secret room and directly entered the old man's forehead. It formed a little girl. "If she's unwilling to leave with you, take out this lock of hair." With that, a tied-up lock of black hair appeared outside the secret room, floating before Qingming. Qingming's eyes suddenly narrowed when he saw the lock of hair. He could tell with a single glance that it belonged to his master. His master's presence clearly lingered on it. Qingming dared not tarry. He carefully accepted the lock of hair and stowed it away carefully before leaving immediately. "Where is War Demon?" Qingming arrived in an empty hall within the divine hall and called out, "Grand Elder." A deep voice rang out in the empty hall. A terrifying pressure suddenly permeated the surroundings when the voice sounded. It seemed like it could collapse the sky as it filled the entire hall with a devastating force. "Come with me to the cloud plane. I have an ill foreboding about this trip, so we have to be extra careful," Qingming said grimly. If the Grand Elder can sense an ill foreboding, it means that the trip to the cloud plane this time might not be peaceful. It has been quite some time since I last fought. I really do look forward to what I can encounter this time. I hope it doesn't disappoint me too much. Chapter 2207, The Changes of the Cloud Plane. In the depths of the imperial palace of the Shi Empire, 3 ancient stone towers stood silently within a forbidden ground. The 3 stone towers represented the absolute power of the Shi Empire. Apart from the current Shi Emperor, they were all the chaotic primes of the empire. They spent most of their time in seclusion within the stone tower, away from worldly affairs. The 3 of them would only be alarmed if extremely dire matters that could threaten the empire happened. But at this moment, the 3 chaotic primes who normally stayed in their own towers were gathered together. Even the dignified Shi Emperor sat below sternly in his dragon robes. The heavenless demon Exalt of the Tian Empire has broken through. A storm of blood will be kicked up on the cloud plane soon, and those involved will be the peak organizations who stand at the apex of the plane. However, our Shi clan, as one of the 4 eternal empires of the cloud plane, control over 80% of the territory in the northern region, so we can't just stay out of this storm. We will definitely be dragged in. There are only 2 choices presented before us right now. The first choice is to yield to the Tian Empire and become one of their subsidiary, where we follow their orders from today onwards. The other choice is to join the resistance and oppose the Tian Empire's path to domination together. I wonder what the 3 of you think of this matter? The oldest ancestral emperor, Shi Lianxue, asked emotionlessly as he looked at the 3 other people. Shi Haoshuan, Shi Haoming, and the current Shi Emperor, Shi Ziyun, remained silent. Although there have been cases where an entire plane has been united under a single rule throughout history, it doesn't happen frequently. As a result, I don't think it'll be easy for the Tian clan to conquer the entire cloud plane this time. There will definitely be a resistance led by the Heavens Linked Peak. Even if the heavenless demon Exalt has broken through and the Lord of the Heavens Linked Peak is no longer his opponent, that doesn't mean he can't put up a fight. After a moment of thought, the Shi Emperor's father, Shi Haoshuan, broke the silence first and analyzed carefully. "You're right. After all, the Lord of Heaven's Link Peak held the title of the strongest on the cloud plane before the heavenless demon Exalt had broken through. His battle prowess is exceptional and rarely does he have an opponent at the same level. Even if he's no longer the heavenless demon Exalt's opponent, he will still able to put up a fight," said Shi Haoming. He held great confidence in the Lord of Heaven's linked peak. It doesn't matter whether the Lord of Heaven's linked peak is the opponent of the heavenless demon Exalt. If we yield to the Tian clan, we will definitely face obstruction from the God's Fallen clan. After all, the God's Fallen clan receives a large number of tributes from us every year. Once we yield to the Tian clan, it means they will lose our tributes permanently. As a result, they will never just stand by and let us yield to the Tian clan, the Shi Emperor said firmly. He continued, compared to yielding to the Tian clan and placing all our chips on them, I'd rather maintain our relationship with the God's Fallen clan. What if I recommend standing with the Tian clan? Shi Lianxue raised an eyebrow and looked at the three of them. Ancestral Emperor, we must consider this matter thoroughly. The Shi Emperor, Shi Haoming, and Shi Haoshuan all objected. They disagreed with yielding to the Tian clan. The Ancestral Emperor, Shi Lianxue, nodded. Since the three of you have doubts in the Tian clan's plan to unite, then, as soon as he reached there, a black demonic aura suddenly flashed through Su Lianxue's pupils. His face immediately turned cold, and with a thought, a powerful pulse of energy radiated out. Countless strands of energy appeared out of nowhere, wrapping around Shi Ziyun, Shi Haoshuan, and Shi Haoming. Not only was Shi Lianxue the ancestral emperor of the Shi Empire in the eyes of Shi Ziyun, Shi Haoshuan, and Shi Haoming, he was also the senior they admired the most. The three of them had never thought that Shi Lianxue, who was basically family, would suddenly attack them. As a result, they were caught off guard, and they became tightly bound by the threads of energy. Moreover, some of the threads entered their bodies, not only immobilizing them but also sealing up their cultivation in the senses of their souls. Ancestral Emperor, Yu, Shi Haoshuan and Shi Haoming looked at Shi Lianxue, who they respected the most, in disbelief. At that moment, they only felt their hearts ache. The Shi Emperor's face sank instead. He glared at Shi Lianxue emotionlessly and said coldly, Ancestral Emperor, what are you trying to do? I can't get you to join the Tian clan, so this is all I can do. Our Shi Empire will be standing on the Tian clan side this time, and we will be assisting them with all we have to conquer the Cloud Plain, said Shi Lianxue. This did not just happen in the Shi Empire of the northern region. The Blood Sun Empire of the southern region, the Zihao Empire of the eastern region, and the Jinjian Empire of the western region all suffered similar incidents at different times. All the peak experts in the imperial family who disagreed with supporting the Tian clan had been trapped through various means by the people who held the greatest authority. In that short period of time, the four renowned eternal empires of the Cloud Plain had silently changed hands. The black-robed heavenless demon Exalt gathered with the two other grand primes of the Tian Empire in a majestic hall within the imperial palace. They were all silent. The heavenless demon Exalt sat in the air with his eyes closed while the other two grand primes both stared at him. At this moment, the eyes of the heavenless demon Exalt snapped open. He said indifferently, the four eternal empires of the Cloud Plain are under my control. We can start the plan. Fantastic. With the submission of the four empires, we have absolute control over the four regions. Next, we only need to focus on dealing with the peak clans. The other two grand primes of the Tian Empire beamed. A vicious light suddenly flashed through the heavenless demon Exalt's eyes. He said coldly, before we deal with them, let's eliminate the foreigners first. Let's start with the Empyrean demon cult first. What? You want to move against the Empyrean demon cult? Are you confident that you can deal with their great elder? Provoking the Empyrean demon cult at a time like this might not be a clever decision. The two other grand primes became fearful when the Empyrean demon cult was mentioned. It's no problem. Although the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult once had a glorious battle record, his strongest opponent was only at the second heavenly layer, so I'm certain that he's at the third heavenly layer at most. There's no need for us to fear him. And the reason why we should start with the Empyrean demon cult is because their branch has soul beads and blood beads refined from many lives. It's exactly what I need to refine my treasure, said the heavenless demon Exalt coldly. As he said that, he extended a hand. Immediately, several dozen cultivators below the primordial realm exploded to death across the cloud plain. The space rings on their fingers exploded as well as a small, black banner flew out. After absorbing the souls of those cultivators, the banner shot off with lightning speed. At the same time, streaks of black light shot over from afar and arrived before the heavenless demon Exalt. They turned into small, black flags in the end. There were a total of 80 of them. The heavenless demon Exalt suddenly frowned when he looked at the black banners. He growled, "Why is one of my 9 soul-gathering banners missing?" Chapter 2208, The Tian Yuan Clan, I'd like to see just who took my 9 soul-gathering banner, the heavenless demon Exalt snorted coldly afterwards. With a thought, the tremendous senses of his soul surged out like a flood, enveloping the entire cloud plain. However, his face sank very soon. The senses of his soul had engulfed the entire cloud plain. Apart from the few peak clans that were protected by formations, he had scoured every inch of the land, including underground. Despite doing so, he still failed to find the missing banner. It looks like the missing banner has either been hidden by a peak clan or taken away from the cloud plain. However, the 81 banners are refined from my demonic blood, so every single one of them are linked to my mind. Let me see just which peak clan dares to take what's mine. Even if the banner has been taken away from the cloud plain by someone, I can still locate it with great precision, the heavenless demon Exalt said coldly. Immediately, the demonic aura around him churned as he emitted a pulse of terrifying energy. He used a secret technique to find the location of the last banner. The other 2 grand primes of the Tian Empire sat before the heavenless demon Exalt silently. Currently, the 2 of them had become stern as well. The heavenless demon Exalt was crucial to whether they could conquer the cloud plain. They did not wish to see any accidents happen. A while later, the demonic aura around the heavenless demon Exalt gradually calmed down. He opened his eyes, and they were filled with cruelty. His face had sunken. "Heavenless, have you found the final banner?" One of the Grand Primes asked rather nervously before the heavenless demon Exalt. "I actually can't sense the final banner at all. However, even if a banner is missing, it won't be able to affect our grand plan of unifying the cloud plain." The divine kingdom of Pingtian that had once been nameless in the southern region was basically an existence that everyone knew about now. Not only had it morphed from a weak divine kingdom into an ancient empire with a primordial realm expert, but most importantly, the Tian Yuan clan existed within it. In terms of strength, the Tian Yuan clan was nothing on the southern region. Some people would not even take them seriously. However, there were no organizations on the vast southern region that dared to underestimate the Tian Yuan clan, much less offend them. That was because their greatest elder was the only daughter of the current emperor of the Shi Empire. The Shi Emperor was a renowned emperor among the 4 eternal empires. For the sake of avenging his daughter, he went as far as to kill most of the members of his imperial family. Even the prestigious Grand Imperial Protector of the Shi Empire was not spared. His viciousness and mercilessness had already engraved itself into the hearts of people, making countless people shiver. At the same time, his love for his daughter was something that many people admired. As a result, with such a forceful and vicious father, there was naturally no one who dared to offend Shiyu in both the northern and southern regions. The Tian Yuan clan Shi resided in gained glory as a result, enjoying a status that did not match up to their strength at all. The Tian Yuan clan remained in the same location in the Dong'an province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. However, it had already changed dramatically compared to when Jianchen departed in the past. Not only did its territory grow by several times over, but it also possessed a more generous bearing. It was possible to see from afar that their fabulous buildings were laid down in an orderly manner. They seemed grand and magnificent, giving off an almost holy aura. A few figures strolled through the fragrant gardens of the Tian Yuan clan at this moment. I never thought that so much would have happened after I left the Tian Yuan continent. The world of the Tian Yuan continent had almost been destroyed as well, but thankfully, everyone toughed it out. A young man with a striking appearance sighed emotionally. He wore white robes and seemed like he was in his 20s. The only pity is that after coming all the way from the Prosper Plain, all I got to see was you, the little tiger, and the 2 kids. The 3 seniors, Roy Jean, Hong Lian, Heiyu, and that snake are not here. The young man shook his head in pity. His voice contained undisguised reminiscence and memories. Unsurprising, the young man was Ming Dong. Humph, you're the kid. You're the kid. You can't bully people just because you're taller. Let me tell you, I'm a little ancestor who has lived for over 1,000,000 years. Who knows how many years I slumbered for before you were born on the Tianyuan continent. Even your ancestors aren't as old as me. A pure girl who only seemed to be 11 or 12 glared at Ming Dong with her hands on her hips as she fumed. Naturally, the girl was Xiao Ling. Xiao Jin and Sacred Feather were with them as well. Xiao Jin still wore his golden clothes, where he seemed like he was made out of gold. He had already grown up now. He seemed much more mature, no longer the little boy from Flame City. Sacred Feather seemed like a handsome young man now. He stood up straight as he strolled slowly with his hands on his back. He was serious and cold in everything he did. He gave off the bearing of an expert. Ming Dong only knew the 3 of them out of the entire Tianyuan clan. Newbies, Roy Jean, Hong Lian, and Heiya had already gone out roaming several years ago. As for Xiongzhong, Qing Jingyun, and so on who came from the world of Forsaken Saints, Ming Dong did not know any of them. Oh. Is this little sister really that old? He, I really couldn't tell. A beautiful woman in snow-white clothes looked at the unaging Xiao Ling from beside Ming Dong with her large beautiful eyes as she laughed gently while covering her mouth. She was the princess of the Thousand Lotus Empire that Ming Dong had met and killed a clone of in the Neptunian Divine Palace, Yun Xiaoyan. Ming Dong did not become interested at all when he looked at the beautiful Yun Xiaoyan beside him. Instead, his heart became filled with bitterness and helplessness, which mixed together in an indescribable mess. He could not help but think about what his 8th senior had said to him when he emerged from the Neptunian Divine Palace. Junior brother, your senior, I have a grasp over the way of fate. I can see the fates of many people and even vaguely peer into the karma of a person's past life. In you and Yun Xiaoyan's past life, Yun Xiaoyan was deeply in love with you and once did many things for you, but you always let her down, deeply hurting her heart. In the end, Yun Xiaoyan died because of you. Her life ended because of you. The 2 of you having the chance to meet in this life might be the secret arrangement of the strands of fate. As a result, you can't let her down again in this life. The 8th Majesty did not tell him about what had happened between them in their past lives because even she was only able to see the surface and not the full picture. However, just that was enough to make it no longer possible for Ming Dong to treat Yun Xiaoyan cruelly. 9th Majesty, secret arrangements are occurring in various places across the cloud plain. It's the calm before the storm. Something major might be about to happen. At this moment, a gleam of golden light flashed through the eyes of the scholarly, middle-aged man who followed Ming Dong every step along the way. Ming Dong dismissed his thoughts when he heard that. He said indifferently, I don't care what happens as long as the Tianyuan clan is unscathed. Chapter 2209, Going to the Desolate Plain, 1. The Azure Pen King hasn't followed us. It looks like we've shaken him off. Jian Chen flew as quickly as he could with the Inata Tower through the danger-ridden spatial crack. He paid attention to the situation of the outside world at all times. He seems to be trapped in the temporal vortex. Temporal vortices really are extremely wondrous. The flow of time varies indefinitely. The Azure Pen King was not much slower than us in charging into the temporal vortex, but we were completely unaffected, while the Azure Pen King was trapped in there, said Jian Chen. He glanced at the Inata Tower. He was uncertain whether it was because of luck or because the Inata Tower's quality was just too great that they managed to emerge from the temporal vortex unaffected. Or perhaps it was because of Jian Chen himself. Although Jian Chen had been hiding within the Inata Tower when they charged into the temporal vortex, he had experienced a wondrous feeling inside. During that moment, He felt like his soul had established an obscure connection with the chaotic laws of time in the temporal vortex, where he seemed to be able to sense their existence. However, because the Inata Tower had only stayed in the temporal vortex for a split second, and the laws there were extremely chaotic, he failed to gain any substantial benefits. That should be a part of luck. After all, I haven't grasped the laws of time, so it's impossible for me to affect the temporal vortex, thought Jian Chen. It was so close before. Thankfully, we charged into the temporal vortex in time, and thankfully, the power of laws in there did not affect us. Otherwise, we would have been killed off by the power of time in the vortex before the Azure Pen King even caught up to us. Kaya patted her chest as she said gladly from beside Jian Chen. She felt like she had just survived a disaster. Suddenly, Jian Chen's face hardened. He looked at Kaya in confusion and said, "Oh right. Kaya, why were you able to detect the Azure Pen King sooner than me?" This had been puzzling Jian Chen. He knew that Kaya was the same as him, where she could detect the situation outside. However, the sensitivity she previously demonstrated was actually even more terrifying than him, who was basically half a master of the Inata Tower. He struggled to accept this. Kaya furrowed her brows in thought. She had no idea how to explain this to Jian Chen because even she did not understand why her soul had suddenly strengthened earlier. I don't know why. I just suddenly had that feeling, Kaya explained it like that after thinking for half a day. Jian Chen nodded and no longer tried to pry anymore. He had begun suspecting that Kaya was the reincarnation of some expert from the various signs Kaya had shown since long ago. Naturally, he knew that this would be due to Kaya's former life. After all, even he had reincarnated. The sword spirits had wrapped around his soul and made him reborn on the Tian Yuan continent. Brother Jian Chen, why have you come in here? At this moment, a delighted voice rang out from afar. The radiant God King in luxurious, white robes, Xian Ming, shot over from afar like a bolt of lightning as he shone with holy light. He arrived before Jian Chen and Kaya in the blink of an eye, looking at the two of them with a face full of smiles. Sigh, we're currently being hunted down by the Azure Pen King. We fled into a spatial crack, and we had no other choice but to hide here, Jian Chen sighed gently. His gaze towards Xian Ming and was slightly shameful. He knew that he had probably drawn Xian Ming into the matter now. After all, with the Azure Pen King's temperament, he probably would not spare Xian Ming once he found out that Xian Ming was connected to Jian Chen, even if it was just through something insignificant. What? The Azure Pen King? One of the 4 heavenly kings of the Lone Heaven Plain, the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance Mountain, the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance? Xian Ming's face changed drastically as he paled in fright. That's right, it's him, said Jian Chen. He had heard quite a few rumors regarding the solitary sword ancestor and the Azure Pen King on planet Tianming. God damn it. Of all the people you could provoke, why the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance? I've heard my father mention the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance before. He said he's unruly, petty, and vengeful. He's known for being difficult to deal with in the saints' world. Not only is he powerful, but his speed is also known to be unmatched. Even peak experts with the laws of space can't necessarily capture him unless they possess an absolute advantage in strength. There definitely won't be any good outcomes from offending the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance. We're in deep trouble now, Xian Ming growled with an ugly expression. Woes weighed on his heart. You don't need to worry too much. As long as you hide here without worrying, even if the tower ends up in the hands of the Azure Pen King, you'll be safe for some time. Moreover, the Azure Pen King should be trapped in a temporal vortex right now. It should be able to keep him trapped for a while, which will give us some time to catch our breaths, said Jian Chen. He knew that the Inata Tower had been completely exposed after what happened on planet Tianming. According to his predictions, the experts of the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng would hurry over very soon as long as no accidents happened. Let alone just a while, but even if it traps the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance for a few years or even a few decades, we won't be able to escape his pursuit with our strength, Xianming became restless like there were ants in his pants. He constantly paced around as he was filled with unease. Let's go to a place where even the Azure Pen King dares not make trouble, like one of the 7 sacred plains of the saints' world, Jian Chen said calmly. The first place he thought of was the Prosper Plain where the heavenly palace of Bisheng resided. The 7 sacred plains were supreme existences in the saints' world. Every single sacred plain had a grand exalt, so the reason why they were sacred was completely because of the 7 grand exalts. When he heard that, Xianming's face immediately lit up. He said excitedly, I know. I'll tell you a good place to go to. Don't go to the 7 sacred plains. Go to the desolate plain. Our radiant Saint Hall just happens to reside on the desolate plain. Is the desolate plain safer than the 7 sacred plains? Jian Chen was doubtful. Xianming sniggered and said with complete confidence, I knew you'd worry about that. But you don't need to worry at all. As long as you go to the desolate plain, the Azure Pen King won't be able to cause any trouble at all because the place is off limits for him. If he dares to set foot on the desolate plain, his own life will be in danger. Since your desolate plain has such an expert, why has your radiant Saint Hall been forced into such a miserable state by the great demon you speak of? Jian Chen asked. Xianming immediately deflated like a balloon from that. He sighed in dejection. He won't care about the matters of our radiant Saint Hall. Let alone right now, when it's just a few radiant god kings. Even if our entire radiant Saint Hall is destroyed, many of the large organizations on the desolate plain wouldn't even bat an eye. No one is willing to provoke an expert like that just for us, including the organizations that we're on good terms with. Jian Chen, let's go to the desolate plain. Since the radiant Saint Hall is on the desolate plain, there's a reason why you have to go there, said Kaya. Chapter 22:10, Going to the Desolate Plain, 2, alright. The desolate plain it is then. Jian Chen hesitated for a moment before agreeing. Indeed, there was a reason why he had to go to the desolate plain. The radiant Saint Hall resided on the desolate plain. Ever since he came to the saint's world, he had struggled to make any progress with his radiant saint force. Even now, his cultivation realm as a radiant saint master remained at the same level as when he was on the Tianyuan continent. It was not because he did not want to increase it. Rather, it was because he lacked the cultivation method. During this time, he had considered creating his own cultivation method, but the creation of each one would take a lengthy period of time. It required countless predictions and experiments before taking shape. As a result, creating a cultivation method clearly did not suit Jian Chen. I have a star chart here. It accurately displays the locations of the 49 planes and 81 planets of the Saints' world as well as some forbidden zones that you should never set foot in, said Xianming. Jian Chen's decision to go to the desolate plain immediately delighted Xianming. Immediately, he gave Jian Chen his star chart as if he was afraid that Jian Chen would get lost. The desolate plain was Xianming's home, so Jian Chen perfectly understood Xianming's feelings. He accepted the star chart from Xianming and said to Kaya, let's not tarry. We'll head there right now. We have to get to the desolate plain before the Azure Pen King breaks free. Afterwards, Jian Chen piloted the Anata Tower in search of a way out. In the Saint's world, when he and Kaya combined their efforts, they could just barely rip open space. However, they dared not do that in the spatial crack, even when Jian Chen's chaotic body had reached the 13th layer. This was because it was just too dangerous. Danger basically laid at every step. Even the slightest ripple of energy could set off a chain reaction and lead to even more severe danger. If they used their full strength here, terrifying consequences would have occurred before they could rip open space. After all, they did not possess strength as terrifying as the Azure Pen Kings, where he had no need to fear the threats here. As a result, they had to find another way out. However, Jian Chen had the Anata Tower protecting him. As long as he did not go outside, he could go anywhere in the spatial crack. As a result, he found a crack that led to the outside world. The crack was very small, only a meter long. Without any hesitation, Jian immediately shrunk the Inata tower to the size of a finger and charged out from the tiny crack. However, as soon as he returned to the saint's world, pulses of powerful energy swept over. Nearby, a colossal space beast was engaged in an intense battle against a bloodied old man. Whether it was the space beast or the old man, they were both extremely powerful. The shock waves of energy from their fight formed terrifying storms that swept through the sky, causing it to collapse and become covered with cracks. The Inata tower charged out from one of those cracks. Jian did not stick his nose into the old man's business. He carefully hid and charged far away because the space beast and the old man were both existences that he could not deal with. The old man was completely suppressed by the space beast. He devoted his efforts to the battle, so he clearly failed to notice the tiny Inata tower. In the end, Jian basically slipped away from right in front of them with the Inata tower. Fortunately, we're close to planet Scarlet Cloud of the 81 planets. With our speed, we should be able to reach there in a day. Hopefully, we can make it. Jian stowed the Inata tower away and took out a small spaceship that Xianming had given him. He unfurled the star chart and hurried off to planet Scarlet Cloud full speed ahead. Xianming's spaceship was of impressive quality. It was extremely fast. In the end, the estimated day's journey was completed in just 4 hours. They arrived on the Scarlet Cloud plain. This time, he did not have Kaya accompanying him. After disguising himself once again, he set foot on the planet alone. He directly made his way to a teleportation formation that could take people across planes. The desolate plain is 505 colored divine crystals per a person. Remember, you can't have anything living in your spatial treasures. Once the formation senses something, there'll be severe consequences, a guard who managed the teleportation formations warned Jian sternly. Jian was secretly stunned when he heard the price. He knew that the price would be very high, so high that even a primordial realm expert would become troubled, but he had never thought it would be so high. 100 supreme quality divine crystals were only worth a single one-colored divine crystal. 10 one-colored divine crystals were worth a single two-colored divine crystal, while 10 two-colored divine crystals were worth a single three-colored divine crystal. This went on, so a single 5-colored divine crystal was equivalent to 10,000 one-colored divine crystals. If it was exchanged to supreme quality divine crystals, a single 5-colored divine crystal would be equivalent to 1,000,000 supreme quality divine crystals. Yet, a single teleportation cost 500 of them. It simply had to be mentioned that the price for teleportation this time was exorbitant. Jian gasped. He handed over 505 colored divine crystals rather painfully before entering the teleportation emotionlessly. The guards near the teleportation formation all paid close attention to Jian. Along the way to the teleportation formation, there were special formations that could check whether people were carrying anything living in their spatial treasures. Basically, all the people who controlled planar teleportation formations in the Saints' world would forbid people from carrying anything living with them for the sake of profit. It would not affect the stability of the formation at all. It was purely for profit. It was also because of this reason that many rather powerful clans and organizations would rather take an arduous journey through space on a spaceship than to take teleportation formations. However, Jian was not worried about the formations discovering that he carried other with him. The Inata Tower was an impressive god artifact after all. It could not be discovered through any old formation. Even Qin Yishuan and Heya had been shifted from the Divine Hall into the Inata Tower. In the end, Jian passed through the formation successfully and left planet Scarlet Cloud to go to the Desolate Plain. When Jian left planet Scarlet Cloud, the Azure Peking finally charged out of the temporal vortex in the spatial crack. He could see that the Inata Tower had already vanished, so his expression became extremely ugly. Even its traces have vanished. It looks like I've been trapped for quite some time. However, I have a droplet of your blood, so no matter where you go, you can't escape from me, the Azure Peking said through gritted teeth. In a primarily pink, warmly decorated room of the Tian Yuan clan, Xiao Ling and Xiao Jin sat at a table. They ate fruit as they talked to each other leisurely. At this moment, a black-robed old man with an ordinary appearance appeared behind Xiao Ling silently like a ghost. The first to discover the old man was Xiao Jin, who sat opposite to Xiao Ling suddenly. His eyes narrowed, and he immediately stood up. He called out, "Who are you?" The old man was amiable. He looked at Xiao Ling curiously, but he felt confused inside. He thought, this girl is only at reciprocity, so why has master sent me personally to receive her? Wah! Grandpa, who are you? How did you get in here? Xiao Ling also discovered the old man behind her. Her pure little face was filled with surprise. The old man said nothing. He did not give off any presence either, such that he seemed ordinary. He studied Xiao Ling for a while before carefully taking out a lock of hair. He held the lock of hair with both hands as if it was extremely important. Even respect filled his face. Chapter 22:11. Heavenless takes action. However, the instant Xiao Ling saw the lock of hair, she became stunned. Her large, bright, and pure eyes stared at the lock of black hair that the black-robed old man held with both hands. Gradually, her eyes turned red as tears pooled up rapidly. In the next moment, Xiao Ling suddenly broke out into tears. Tears ran down her face along with memories. Master! Master, where are you? Have you abandoned Xiao Ling? Have you forgotten Xiao Ling? Xiao Ling really misses you so much. Xiao Ling took the lock of hair from the old man's hands and pressed it against her face gently as she sobbed with a heavy sense of longing. Xiao Jin, who stood to one side, could not endure it when he saw how sorrowful Xiao Ling had become. Suddenly, he looked at the old man of unknown origins and asked, "Where did you get the lock of hair from?" Xiao Jin had spent so much time with Xiao Ling naturally, he knew that his sister Xiao Ling had a master in the past. Now that he saw Xiao Ling suddenly remember her master from the lock of hair, he naturally understood that the lock of hair came from Xiao Ling's master. The old man ignored Xiao Jin. Currently, Xiao Jin was basically non-existent in his eyes. He did not raise the old man's attention at all. He directed all his attention towards Xiao Ling, who held the lock of hair as she sobbed. "Little sister, sense it closely. Is the presence on the lock of hair really your master's? Are you completely certain?" The old man asked carefully. His gaze towards Xiao Ling became extremely strange. "It can't be wrong. It can't be wrong. This is my master's presence. This is my master's presence. It's impossible for me to get my master's presence wrong," Xiao Ling said with absolute confidence. With tears on her cheeks, she looked at the old man hopefully and sobbed, "Grandpa, please tell me where you got my master's hair from. Please. I really, really want to see my master." Xiao Ling was basically begging. Her longing for her master had basically accumulated over 1,000,000 years. Even when she came to the saint's world with Jian Chen, her primary objective was to find her master. This was because in Xiao Ling's life, her master was like her father. He was an extremely important figure in her life that no one could replace. The old man sucked in a deep breath, and his gaze towards Xiao Ling changed drastically. Only after a while of silence did he say, "I am Qing Ming, a servant of my master. You can directly call me by my name. The lock of hair came from my master, and he gave it to me. He sent me to the cloud plain in search of you with the lock of hair. He wanted me to take you away. If you want to see your master, please come with me." "Is your master Mo Tianyun?" Xiao Jin asked as he stared at Qing Ming in shock. Xiao Jin was not unfamiliar with Mo Tianyun. He was a legendary figure in the history of the Tian Yuan continent, one of the 4 champions of the ancient times. His renown had lasted for 1,000,000 years, affecting generations to come. Qing Ming frowned. He glanced at Xiao Jin with quite some displeasure and said coldly, "I dare not discuss about my master's name so casually. Do not ask for it recklessly." "All right. I'll go with you. I want to see my master soon. However, I have to take brother Xiao Jin with me, Xiao Ling immediately replied. Her master's position in her heart was unshakable. No one could replace him. Now that she had finally received news of her master, she was tempted to fly to his side immediately. Of course. We'll set off immediately. Go bid farewell to your friends outside, just in case it leads to some misunderstanding, Qingming said and glanced outside. Xiao Ling nodded. Suddenly, her heart began to burn warmly as she ran out eagerly and excitedly. She wanted to bid farewell to the people of the Tian Yuan clan. However, as soon as Xiao Ling opened the door, she discovered a middle-aged, scholarly man in white robes standing at the doorway. Xiao Ling almost ran into him. Behind the middle-aged man were Ming Dong and Yun Xiaoyan. Why have you come here? Xiao Ling wiped away her tears and asked in surprise. How can I not worry when an uninvited guest barges into the Tian Yuan clan and directly enters Sister Xiao Ling's room? Ming Dong said from behind the middle-aged man. Suddenly, he looked behind Xiao Ling. He looked at the black-robed Qingming, who made his way over steadily, and he became stern. He said coldly, "Who are you? State your intentions." Seeing that the person who spoke was actually Ming Dong, Qingming revealed a smear of surprise. He looked at Ming Dong deeply before pointing at Xiao Ling. My master is her master. I've come under my master's orders to take her away. Your master is Mo Tianyun? Ming Dong's eyes narrowed. As soon as Mo Tianyun was mentioned, he could not help but become stern. He asked, how can you prove it? I can prove it. The presence from this lock of hair belongs to my master. It's impossible for me to get my master's presence wrong. I want to see my master immediately, Xiao Ling said eagerly. Afterwards, she immediately ran past the middle-aged man and headed towards the people she was familiar with in the Tian Yuan clan to bid farewell to them. I wonder where Senior Mo Tianyun is and how I can find him. I'd like to visit him in person. Ming Dong also clasped his hands towards Qingming after Xiao Ling left. Clearly, he believed this person slightly. He knew the old man before him had a very powerful cultivation such that the divine general beside him had to face him sternly. Experts like that would not lower themselves by lying. Ming Dong was filled with admiration towards Mo Tianyun. He came from the Tian Yuan continent as well after all, so he had heard many rumors about Mo Tianyun. Mo Tianyun had been a great impact on him. Please forgive me for being unable to answer your question. I can only pass on your message to Master, said Qingming. Afterwards, Ming Dong tried to learn some things about Mo Tianyun from Qingming again, but Qingming kept his mouth shut tight, so Ming Dong failed to learn anything. As a matter of fact, Qingming never even admitted that his master was the Mo Tianyun Ming Dong mentioned. He always referred to him as master. All right, let's go. I want to see my master quick, very soon. Xiao Ling ran back with lightning speed. Her sudden departure had alarmed many important people of the Tian Yuan clan. Not only had the greatest elder of the Tian Yuan clan, Shiyu, personally come, but even Sacred Feather came. Qingming nodded. Without saying anything more, he gently swung his sleeve and disappeared with Xiao Ling and Xiao Jin. Who is he? Not only am I unable to sense his cultivation at all, but I also felt nothing when he barged into the Tian Yuan clan, an old man behind Shiyu said in complete surprise after the two of them had vanished. He was a subject of the Shi Empire and an infinite prime. He had been specially sent by the Shi Emperor to protect Shiyu. He has already reached the peak of chaotic prime and is only a step away from grand prime. Naturally, you won't be able to sense him, said the middle-aged man who followed Ming Dong. What? Peak chaotic prime. All the upper echelon of the Tian Yuan clan paled in fright. They were utterly shocked. Uncle Ming, have you heard of the name Mo Tianyun before? Ming Dong asked the divine general. The middle-aged man referred to as Uncle Ming shook his head. I've never heard of this name before. However, seeing how he can have a peak chaotic prime as a servant, he must be a grand prime and an extremely powerful one at that. Perhaps, Mo Tianyun is not his real name. He might have another name in the saints' world. Qingming had already left the cloud plane with Xiao Ling and Xiao Jin. He hurried through outer space. He did not use any spaceships. Instead, he walked leisurely, like he was strolling through space. He moved extremely quickly, passing a world with each step. The stars around him changed rapidly, and in just a few steps, the tremendous cloud plane had become the size of a hand, hovering in outer space silently. He, I never thought the Grand Elder of the Empyrean Demon Cult and the War Demon, one of the 5 infamous generals, would actually come to the cloud plane personally. Since you've come, why leave in such a hurry? At this moment, cold laughter rang out in outer space. A huge cloud of demonic aura churned before Qingming, giving off a terrifying, devastating presence. The heavenless demon exalt. Qingming stopped. He glared at the cloud of demonic aura and called out as his face sank. Beside Qingming, the war demon who accompanied him appeared. He stared at the churning black cloud sternly and growled, "This heavenless demon exalt has come with ill intentions. Grand Elder, you leave with them first. I'll cover you." Chapter 22:12. The Grand Elder's death. Qingming became extremely stern. When he came here, he felt an ill foreboding. Now that the heavenless demon exalt had suddenly blocked his path, Qingming sensed that the situation was bad. "I should remain behind and fight him to the death with you, but Master has ordered that I must take the girl back safely, so I can't let anything happen to her. War Demon, be careful. Remember, do not try to take him on forcefully, and you have to leave a fragment of your soul intact no matter what so that Master can revive you in the future," Qingming warned before using a secret technique and charging off in the other direction as quickly as possible. He. Grand Elder, I've come especially for you, so how can you just turn around and leave without saying anything? Am I really that scary? The heavenless demon exalt snickered. As he said that, a terrifying demonic aura erupted, causing space to crack and the stars around them to dim. It condensed into a huge hand that reached towards Qingming. When the hand fell, endless energy surged out, sealing up the region, causing Qingming to pause. At the same time, he slowed down as if some invisible energy had restrained him. War blood ignition. At this moment, the war demon bellowed out furiously. With a tremendous presence, he used a god-tier battle skill. All the vital energies within him rose, and a black flame sprang up on him as he directly hurled out a fist. This punch was astonishing, swinging out like it was unstoppable. It shattered the starry space, causing the galaxies to vanish. At the same time, Qingming fought back with his full strength when he saw how the heavenless demon exalt had restrained him. He completely unleashed his strength as a peak chaotic prime and directly used a god-tier battle skill, employing his strongest attack at the hand condensed from demonic aura. Qingming and the war demon's full-powered strikes struck the heavenless demon exalt's hand at basically the same time, erupting with a deafening boom. The clash this time was truly devastating. Regions of space collapsed one after another, truly being reduced to void. However, the difference in strength was still far too great. Not only did they fail to stop the heavenless demon exalt's seemingly casual strike with their full strength, but they also became heavily injured instead when the hand condensed from demonic aura struck them. Bang! The war demon was struck first. His entire body shattered, exploding into a bloody rain in outer space. His body was destroyed, and only a soul that did not shine particularly brightly was left behind. Qingming's situation was not any better. The medium-quality god artifact armor he wore had dimmed while his face had completely paled. His entire right arm had vanished. Qingming and the war demon were only chaotic primes, while the heavenless demon exalt was a fourth heavenly layer grand prime, a mid-grand prime. The difference in strength was simply too great such that they were on completely different levels. As a result, the battle became completely one-sided. Grand Elder, go! The war demon called out miserably. His dim soul suddenly lit up brightly while all the blood scattered there was ignited in that instance as well. Black, demonic flames sprang up, gathering together from all directions and charging towards the heavenless demon Exalt fearlessly. Boom! Suddenly, a great sound rang out. The war demon's soul and his blood all unleashed in astonishing might, surrounding the heavenless demon Exalt and blowing up. This time, no energy was released. Even the deafening boom only lasted for a single instant before vanishing. The scene the war demon's self-destruction created was just too terrifying. A gaping, black hole formed in the space, there, greedily devouring everything present. Whether it was light or energy, the black hole had devoured it all. War demon! Qingming called out sorrowfully. He looked at the small black hole in the distance as hatred filled his eyes. Afterwards, he turned around to leave, unwilling to waste any time at all. Your self-destruction is indeed powerful. It can probably injure first heavenly layer grand primes and threaten second heavenly layer grand primes, but to me, it's still far too weak, said the heavenless demon Exalt. He stood near the black hole, and he did not waver at all no matter how hard the hole sucked. Even his clothes did not flutter. He swung his hand gently and used his hand to rub space. As if the hole had experienced an unimaginable pressure, it collapsed loudly. Grand Elder, give me the method of how your Empyrean demon cult refines blood and soul beads. I'll let you go if you do, the heavenless demon Exalt said steadily. Having reached the fourth heavenly layer of Grand Prime, he was now the undisputed greatest expert on the cloud plane. He had completely stopped fearing the Great Elder behind the Empyrean demon cult. This was because in his eyes, the Great Elder was only a third heavenly layer Grand Prime at most. Even if he could make some progress and reach the fourth heavenly layer, he would only be at the same level as the heavenless demon Exalt. Moreover, there was another reason why he dared to attack the Empyrean demon cult. This reason was that he possessed reliable information that only the Great Elder was a Grand Prime in the Empyrean demon cult, while he, the heavenless demon Exalt, was not alone. He still had the Tian Empire behind him as well as the Peak clans that had banded together with the Tian Empire. His Tian clan had already gathered around half of the Peak powers across the cloud plane now. Heavenless demon Exalt, you will suffer a horrible fate by opposing our Empyrean demon cult. Master will not spare you, Qingming bellowed out furiously before directly fleeing into a spatial crack. If that's the case, die. As for your Great Elder, I'll naturally try him after we conquer the cloud plane. I'll get the method of refining blood and soul beads from him, the heavenless demon Exalt said coldly. A demonic presence wrapped around him, and he also entered the spatial crack, pointing at Qingming who was fleeing for his life from afar. In the next moment, endless demonic aura suddenly surged out from around Qingming. It wrapped around his body and were like maggots that devoured his flesh at a visible rate. There seemed to be a dense swarm of demonic insects in the demonic aura. I can't just let your body and soul go to waste like the war demons. They're perfect for feeding my demonic soul beetles, the heavenless demon Exalt smirked viciously. Heavenless demon Exalt, just you wait for my master's wrath. Qingming was not hesitant with his decision. Immediately, he abandoned his body and fled with his soul and the divine hall. The heavenless demon Exalt's eyes lit up slightly when he saw the divine hall Qingming tried to take away with him. He smiled gently, you don't even want your space ring, yet you want the divine hall. It looks like the divine hall is extremely important to you. The heavenless demon Exalt extended his hand from afar. Demonic aura surged and formed a huge hand once again, destroying the spatial storms and streaks of energy along the way to grab Qingming's soul in a brutal fashion. Afterwards, the hand closed slightly, and Qingming's soul immediately began to collapse. It turned into specks of light in the spatial crack, gradually dispersing. The heavenless demon Exalt ignored Qingming. In his eyes, Qingming was already dead. He looked at the divine hall and showed interest. Afterwards, he used 2 fingers to pinch the fist-sized divine hall, and with a slight exertion of force, the divine hall immediately shattered, revealing Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling that Qingming had let in there. Who are you? Where's Grandpa Qingming? Xiao Ling looked at the heavenless demon Exalt, who churned with demonic aura in confusion as she asked fearfully. She sensed a frightening presence from the heavenless demon Exalt. Xiao Jin also stood next to Xiao Ling uneasily. He looked at the heavenless demon Exalt closely and said nothing. The presence that the heavenless demon Exalt gave off terrified him. Looking at Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling, who had suddenly appeared before him with disappointing cultivation, the heavenless demon Exalt was clearly surprised. He felt very confused or even disbelief. The Grand Elder of the Empyrean demon cult did not even want his space ring, using all the power of his soul to flee with the Divine Hall. Clearly, the Divine Hall must have contained something extremely important. The heavenless demon Exalt even suspected that the Grand Elder had come to the cloud plane this time because of what was in the Divine Hall. However, why did two brats with an embarrassing level of cultivation appear before him? Has the Grand Elder come especially for the two of you? The heavenless demon Exalt sank into his thoughts. He became more and more certain before smiling coldly in the end. He, if that's the case, I'll keep the two of you for now. Maybe you'll be of great use in the future. With a wave of his hand, the heavenless demon Exalt disappeared from the spatial crack with Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling. Chapter 22:13. The Great Elder. After the heavenless demon Exalt departed, a weak speck of light suddenly appeared with an extremely weak mental pulse in the spatial crack. This was a fragment of the Grand Elder's soul. Although the heavenless demon Exalt had crushed Qingming's soul, causing it to disperse and vanish in the chaotic spatial crack, Qingming did not truly die. He used a secret technique from his master to save a fragment of his soul. With a flash, the fragment of Qingming's soul vanished. The white-robed, sagely Lord of the Heavens Link Peak and 6 other people of various ages currently sat around an extremely precious table made from white jade on the top of Heaven's Link Peak. He discussed the plans to fend off the Tian Empire with them. The 6 people who sat on the same table as the Lord concealed their presence, without letting any of it leak out. As such, they seemed just like ordinary people. However, they were actually peak experts who stood at the apex of the cloud plane. They were terrifying figures where the entire cloud plane would shake if they stamped their feet. The heavenless demon Exalt has already killed the Grand Elder of the Empyrean demon cult as well as the war demon of the 5 generals. It looks like the heavenless demon Exalt is confident in dealing with the Great Elder who rarely shows himself, said an extremely ordinary old man. His was extremely old, where his back was hunched and his face was filled with wrinkles. He seemed like he was about to pass away from old age. This old man was the ancestor of the Tong family, one of the peak clans of the Cloud Plain. He was Tong Luming. The more powerful the heavenless demon Exalt is, the worse our position is. He does not fear the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult, which is not good news for us, said a middle-aged man in green clothes. He had a resolute face. He was the ancestor of the God's Fallen clan, Luo Mantian. The God's Fallen clan was also one of the peak organizations of the Cloud Plain. They were located in the northern region. In my opinion, this is the heavenless demon Exalt showing off his strength to us. He has killed the Grand Elder of the Empyrean demon cult with lightning speed, showing us his strength through how he does not fear the Empyrean demon cult at all. He's warning us to not put up futile resistance, growled another old man. His complexion was not fantastic. He was the ancestors of the Fire God clan, Lian Wuji. Peak Lord, may I ask how confident you are in defeating the heavenless demon Exalt? The founding ancestor of the cosmic sect, Zhou Zhidao, asked. All the people seated there looked at the Lord of Heaven's Link Peak after hearing Zhou Zhidao's question. The Lord of Heaven's Link Peak was a peak 3rd heavenly layer Grand Prime. He used to hold the position of the most powerful on the Cloud Plane. He was a prestigious person on the Cloud Plane who many peak clans respected. On the current Cloud Plane, if there was someone who had the right to put up a fight against the heavenless demon Exalt, it would definitely be the Lord of Heaven's Link Peak. This was because all the other Grand Primes on the Cloud Plane were at the 1st or 2nd heavenly layers. Their strength differed from the fourth heavenly layer heavenless demon Exalt by far too much. The eyes of the Peak Lord had always remained fixated on outer space, where the Grand Elder and the heavenless demon Exalt fought. It was extremely distant from the cloud plane, so distant that even the tremendous cloud plane would seem like a hand-sized piece of land floating in space. It had surpassed the range that chaotic primes could sense. Only grand primes could observe everything that happened there. A strange light flickered through the Peak Lord's eyes. He said, I have complete confidence in defeating him when we were at the same level of cultivation, but now that he has reached the fourth heavenly layer before me, there's no chance for me to defeat him when I meet him next time. I can only keep him busy for a while at most, but I will still suffer defeat once it gets drawn out. Then what should we do? The Tian Empire already possesses 3 grand primes. They also have some peak clans who stand with them. In terms of peak experts, we're completely outmatched in terms of numbers. And once you throw the heavenless demon Exalt into the equation, Sai, the founding ancestor of the cosmic sect, Zhou Zhidao, let out a long sigh. He was worried. Apart from the Lord of Heaven's Link Peak, all the ancestors who gathered there had heavy hearts. The situation before them was not optimistic. Do we really have to yield to them? Do we really have to follow them in the future? Luo Mantian of the God's Fallen clan sighed gently. All the people present were experts who reigned over an entire region. They had grown accustomed to being able to order people after spending so much time in a position of power. Now that they had to serve someone else, they all struggled to accept it. On the other hand, the Peak Lord remained calm. He said, You don't need to worry. There's no need for us to worry about the heavenless demon Exalt anymore. Why do you say that, Peak Lord? The Lord of Heaven's Link Peak pointed at outer space, where the heavenless demon Exalt had stopped the Grand Elder. The heavenless demon Exalt has completely offended the Empyrean demon cult now. Moreover, he seems to have taken something extremely important from the hands of the Grand Elder. I believe that before long, the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult will come to the cloud plane in person. Can the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult stop the heavenless demon Exalt? The eyes of all the peak experts there narrowed. The Lord of Heaven's Link Peak seemed to think of someone that he had personally witnessed in the past from that. Immediately, fear flooded his eyes, and he said, You underestimate the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult far too much. He's far more terrifying than you imagine him to be. Since the heavenless demon Exalt has offended the Great Elder, his fate has become determined. The priority for us right now is to stop the advances of the Tian Empire before the Great Elder arrives. But just in case, I'd recommend everyone to have some clansmen retreat from the cloud plane so that you have some survivors if anything goes bad. If that's the case, I'll go back and arrange it immediately. We will formally come into conflict with the Tian clan very soon, so we don't have much time left. I hope that the mysterious Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult can make it in time. In an unknown space of the Saints' world, the soul fragment of the Grand Elder entered a majestic divine hall with a flash. Master. Very soon, Qingming's soul fragment arrived before a closed secret room. He turned into a fist-sized figure and knelt before the room as he trembled. What has happened? A serious voice rang out from the secret room. We were attacked by the heavenless demon Exalt. Qingming gave a simple explanation of what happened. Rumble. The door to the secret room opened slowly, and immediately, a cold power of slaughter radiated out. A black-robed, middle-aged man with a striking appearance walked out. His face was sunken. He stared at Qingming's soul fragment sharply and growled, What about the person I got you to bring? She has been taken by the heavenless demon Exalt, Qingming said fearfully. The heavenless demon Exalt. In that instance, the middle-aged man's gaze became extremely terrifying and shocking. Killing intent radiated from him, and even his eyes became bloodshot from bloodlust. At that moment, he seemed to have become a bloodthirsty beast. Qingming, who knelt in the air as a soul fragment, became filled with fear and unease. He had followed his master for so many years, but he had never seen his master so angered. I can't wait any longer. My original body has to break free immediately. The middle-aged man's face was sunken. He let Qingming leave to rebuild his body before turning around and entering the secret room again. The door closed once more. At the same time, there was a barren planet of deathly silence in an extremely distant region of space. A middle-aged man who seemed exactly the same as the master Qingming spoke of sat underground in white robes. Suddenly, the person's eyes snapped open, and intense killing intent flashed through them. Then he took a step and vanished immediately. When he appeared once again, he was in outer space. He closed his eyes and sensed for something silently before shooting off in a certain direction. Chapter 22:14. Hallowed Saint Masters. Jian Chen had already arrived on the desolate plain now. Currently, he was in a luxurious inn within the central region. He had ordered some dishes and ate by himself. Many people ate in the inn. They enjoyed their alcohol as they discussed with one another loudly in great interest. They talked about the various interesting matters that had occurred on the desolate plain as well as various rumors that they had heard. Jian Chen had already gained a rough understanding of the desolate plain from Xian Ming. However, it had already been far too long since Xian Ming had returned to the desolate plain, so he only learned about some very old matters from Xian Ming. As a result, Jian Chen needed to acquire some new knowledge about the current desolate plain. After all, he did not plan on staying here for just a few days. If nothing went wrong, he would be on the desolate plain for quite a long time. In 3 years, the Radiant Saint Hall will select a new chosen saint. I wonder who will become the chosen saint this time. It's said that there are 5 geniuses with 9-star talent in the Radiant Saint Hall right now. 3 of them have gone from being a Class 1 Radiant Saint Master to Class 9 in just 1,000 years. It's said that they're all trying to comprehend the second law of being a Radiant Saint Master, the laws of the Hallowed, to become a Hallowed Saint Master. It shouldn't take long for them to become extremely powerful Hallowed Saint Masters. Hallowed Saint Masters are existences with extremely great battle prowess. They rarely have any opponents at the same level of cultivation. Only those supreme prodigies raised by great organizations have the right to rival them. The heavens are fair. Even though Hallowed Saint Masters have very powerful battle prowess, there's a price for them to pay as well, and that's the great difficulty in making any progress. How long do you think the 3 9-star geniuses who reached Class 9 in just a millennia will take before they comprehend the second law of Radiant Saint Masters and become a Hallowed Saint Master? At this moment, the discussion to one side raised Jian Chen's attention. He turned his head slightly and glanced at them very casually. They were a group of young people in white robes, which he identified to be Radiant Saint Masters with a single glance. They discussed the matters of Radiant Saint Masters enthusiastically. Jian Chen was not unfamiliar with the chosen saint and 9-star geniuses. He had already understood it from Xian Ming. The chosen saint was the most outstanding person selected from all the Radiant Saint Masters of the Radiant Saint Hall through various means of elimination and selection. This person would then be raised into the leader of the younger generation with the most authority. Moreover, they would have all the resources and the full support of the Radiant Saint Hall. Once a chosen saint was selected, they would be an existence that stood above almost everyone in the Radiant Saint Hall. Not only would they be a representation of status and authority, but they would also have an exceptional future paved for them, possessing extremely great room for growth and future glory. However, it would be extremely difficult to become the chosen saint. In the past, even with Xian Ming's talent, he had no right to be chosen. As for the 9-star geniuses, it was a form of measurement for the talent of Radiant Saint Masters. Every single person who could be called a genius possessed extraordinary talent. They would be a 1-star genius at the very least, and it could range to as high as a 9-star genius. Even 1-star geniuses would have a certain amount of status in the Radiant Saint Hall. They would receive superior treatment, which could not be compared to regular disciples. As for Hallowed Saint Masters, they were like Xian Ming, who had grasped the trick to change Radiant Saint Force. As a result, not only did it possess healing qualities, but it also possessed great offensive power. Right now, Jian Shen was only a Class 9 Radiant Saint Master at most. He was not a hallowed Saint Master. After remaining there for a little longer, Jian Shen realized that he could not obtain any more useful information. As such, he left some high-grade divine crystals and left the inn. He had a basic understanding of the desolate plain situation. It was also split into 5 major regions, and the Radiant Saint Hall resided in the central region. It was not far from where he was right now. Jian Shen directly made his way to the Radiant Saint Hall. He discovered many wanted posters stuck around the streets. Unsurprisingly, he was there. However, the person who had published them was only the solitary sword ancestor. The Azure Peng King's wanted posters did not seem to reach the desolate plain yet. Apart from him, there was also a young man who was wanted. His image was stuck all over the streets and alleyways. The young man was called Qing Shan. He was handsome and only seemed to be 25 or 26. The people who had published the posters were the Radiant Saint Hall. Qing Shan comes from the Martial Soul Mountain, ranked first on the God King's throne. Jian Shen's gaze darkened when he saw Qing Shan's introduction. When he had just come to the desolate plain, he had already heard of the Martial Soul lineage. They were hostile to the Radiant Saint Hall, where the two of them were basically arch-enemies. The reason why Qing Shan was wanted by the Radiant Saint Hall was because he killed a hallowed Saint Master who had condensed a soul tree from the Radiant Saint Hall. The cultivation system of Radiant Saint Masters was different from fighters. Hallowed Saint Masters who had condensed soul trees were akin to primordial realm experts. There are rarely any opponents of Hallowed Saint Masters at the same level of cultivation as them, yet a Hallowed Saint Master who has condensed a soul tree and reached the primordial realm was slain by Qing Shan, a mere God King. Qing Shan truly deserves the position of first on the God King's throne, Jian Shen thought. He could not help but compare Qing Shan to Shui Yunlan. Shui Yunlan was also known to be invincible among God Kings. Her strength had been fully revealed in the Neptunian Divine Palace. Jian Shen stopped when he passed by the center of the city. He stared ahead. There was a flight of stairs completely constructed from sword qi. It led towards the sky, heading into the depths of the clouds. Quite a few people had gathered at the bottom of the sword qi stairs. From time to time, a few young prodigies would step onto the stairs with determination and burning desire, doing everything they could to reach the end. The stairs formed from sword qi were known as the Path of Swords. It was rumored that the Path of Swords had already existed on the desolate plain for hundreds of thousand years. It was so well known that its name was not restricted to the desolate plain. It had even spread to other planes. This was because the Path of Swords was a test personally set down by the Celestial Sword Saint. It was once said that someone made it to the end of the Path of Swords, they would have the right to be accepted as the Celestial Sword Saint's disciple. The Celestial Sword Saint was referred to people as a saint on the desolate plain, so his strength was evident. Jian Shen stopped before the Path of Swords for a very long time. He silently sensed the incredible sword intent that radiated from the stairs before leaving in the end. Before long, he arrived at the Radiant Saint Hall. "I want to join the Radiant Saint Hall." Jian Shen directly stated his intentions. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.